goes, a lonely cry in the cold, hard light. In the shadows where whispers dwell,
143.
slight guitar sings of love's farewell.
10-4, I just wanted to know if
Echoes of the heart once bold, now lost in the night's cold fold. Secrets hidden deep within, tales of love that couldn't win, promises made in moonlight's glow, now broken like a shattered show. Sorrow in the guitar's cry, resilience in the sky. Through the night we'll find our way, carrying secrets, holding on today. Memories of laughter and tears, in the silence they appear, whispers of a time so true, when love was all we knew. Lost in the echoes of the past, wishing for what we had. In the dark we search for light, holding on to what we fight. Through the pain, through the night, we find strength in the fight. Sorrow in the guitar's cry, resilience in the sky. Through the night we'll find our way, carrying secrets, holding on today. Sorrow in the guitar's cry, resilience in the sky. Through the night we'll find our way, carrying secrets, holding on today.
521.
Sorry, a card for a parking problem.
Foreigner 23.
Yes, that's 28 on truck when you're ready.
Go ahead.
Hey, good evening, everybody. We're going to have a special panel tonight to discuss the Karen Reed case, and I am really looking forward to this because we have some of the voices that you're very well familiar with from seeing on our channel regularly, but we also have some not new voices, but voices we don't get to hear from as much, voices that we hear from have during the past who have covered this case very closely. Most of their coverage is maybe on Twitter, or in the case of Tuesday Gazette, in her excellent articles that she puts out, a recap of each trial. So we're going to get to hear from everybody. So it's going to be good like that. We got a very strong panel. And I also want to say, I got to get the new intro from Kate. I don't have that. So everybody's is loved the intro that Kate's been using on this channel for the last couple of weeks. I don't have it. So you're stuck with my old time clock here. The main reason I do this intro is I just like to give it the time clock, so that people that are just they may not have the notification, and all of a sudden they're turning on and they see we're live, and they don't want to be this. They're such a big part of chat that they want to get caught up. So at least it gives them a 5-minute chance to get kind of gather into the room. So that's why I do that. Let me pull this out here. And so that's the format today. And so as people settle in, we'll introduce them. And so first I'll bring in the people that you're very well familiar with. Hold on a second. I had to. This is Kate, who did such a great job running the channel and still helping to run the channel. Katie here.
Yeah, I'm stuck. I can't get myself off of virtual cam right now. So that's
No, no.
I don't know why I can't get myself off of virtual cam right now.
I always I try to reboot before every show, and I forgot this time. You saw that little technical glitch at the beginning. So, and even sometimes
That's why
when
I was
reboot,
binging in and out on different accounts, honestly, as I was having a hard time anyway. But like, long
yeah.
story short, I can't get my virtual cam off from the
And
Karen
let me
Camera League.
and then here's another one of our old time panel members. She's not old time, but an old time guest, a regular of ours, going back to the first trial, Jen Coffindaffer. I don't hear your mic, Jen.
You hear me now?
Oh, yeah, we hear you now. Very good. How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's good to be back, and it's good to be with all you guys. And I was really enjoying watching you guys when I was couldn't contribute, but I could still watch. Um, and so this show actually was I'm going to bring on Tuesday. This show is Tuesday Gazette's idea. She reached out and said, "Why don't we do a panel on this?" How you doing, Tuesday?
Hello, guys.
Look
And
at
How
how
are ya?
Tuesday is. I've never seen Tuesday. I love what you write, and I always highlight it because you did such a great job, and you're beautiful
Aw,
to boot.
well, right back at ya. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And
And what Tuesday's been doing is really valuable too, because we need that recap, and you're the only one that's doing a reliable kind of daily recap on the trial.
yeah, I feel like I'm doing it out of necessity, not necessarily because I'm madly in love with doing it right now.
Right.
But you know, there needs to be a place that is not overly indulged in commentary. Like it's so
Right.
easy for us to sit, but I feel like the facts can easily
Yeah.
get lost. So it's just nice to have a reference place for
Yeah.
it.
It's a lot of work, and you're right, and it's very vital and necessary. And I don't even know, like I've had people say, even like when I was in the hospital, where do I turn for just a recap that gives me updated information? You know, it's really hard to find. I tried to do it last year and it ended up being too much work doing streaming the trial and doing court TV. So I can't think of any place else to go except for Tuesday Gazette's blog that to get that, really solid recap of the main events of the day.
100%.
So I think it's been
Well,
very valuable.
thank you. I mean, I'm so grateful that there's a place to go to also listen to wise voices in a sea of nonsense, really. So I always appreciate, that you guys are putting yourselves out there and helping the conversations go in a healthy in a healthy way,
Yeah.
outside of the sensationalized tabloid news.
Right. We try. We jump outside the line sometimes too, but we do try. Let me also bring in Daniel. This is Daniel from Drunken Attorneys, or the
Oh, good.
DT show. Dan's a semi-regular guest for us. He's more famous for covering the Kohlberger case, which he has, strong connections to the media and other sources in that case. Maybe some of the strongest that you'll find on YouTube. Hey, Daniel, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's good to see you, Kevin. You look great.
Thank you. It's really good to see you too, man. I kept watching to see if you would show up on any of the other shows when I was in the hospital, and if you did, I missed it. But was wondering if you. I was still was sending you the links, and
Yeah, I tried a couple of times, but for the most part, during the day, I'm Mr. Dad, and so I have my little one. Sometimes it's kind of hard to jump on
Yeah.
there, but when I can, I definitely will try.
Have you fully healed from the dog bite, or fully enough?
Fully enough. The wound is
Yeah.
finally closed. I'm just working on movement now on my hand, and so
Right.
I'm probably about 75%. I'd say about 75%. I may never get to 100%, but I think I can get pretty close.
Do you have to go through occupational therapy or
Yeah,
physical
that's what I'm
therapy? Yeah.
currently doing. Yes, sir.
Yeah. My sister's an occupational therapist. All right. So let me also bring in. This is not a new voice to me, and not a new voice to some of the people on the channel, but she's never been on a show before. And I call her the Yellow Cottage Tales legal counsel. And so she's going to go by the name Red Sky today. It's just, it's important for a lot of people for various reasons, family and stuff, to remain anonymous. But I talk to her frequently on the phone. She is a former practicing trial attorney, and she has a brilliant mind, and she'll be a missing element for us here because we don't have anybody here on the panel that is a lawyer. So her former legal experience, and like I said, I've talked to her many times on the phone, and I found her very helpful and insightful and sometimes brilliant. So let me introduce the probably a little bit nervous because it's her first time, Red Sky. We'll give her a second to see if she's connected properly because this is new. Can you hear us, Red Sky?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, we hear you good.
Oh, good. It's a
We
pleasure
hear you
to
very
be
well.
here. Thank you so much for having me tonight, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a really big fan of everyone here.
So I'm not sure if it's just the way I'm hearing it, but if there's a way to turn your mic up a little bit, Red Sky, do it. Are you guys hearing her down a little bit, or?
Is this
Just a
better?
little bit.
I don't want to shout at anybody, so I just wanted to keep my voice down.
You can shout at us. Don't worry.
Okay.
We can take it.
Is this too loud?
No, that's good, and maybe even a little louder if you have it, but don't sweat it. We can hear you. We can hear you plenty enough. And there may
Okay,
be some
great.
other people popping in. So I think Julie might come in. Do you know Tuesday? Is she still planning on joining us, or?
You know what? I think she was, and then she got sidetracked with something. So it'll be a surprise
Okay.
if
And
she comes.
okay. And then John DePetro might pop in depending on if his schedule allows. So, but we got a great panel to discuss things here, and we want to hear from the voices that we hear a little bit less from. We hear from me and Kate all the time, so we'll be here to just kind of pick up the slack if something goes wrong. But we want to hear from Tuesday and Jen and Red and Dan. So let's just start with, and then it'll be freewheeling after this. And me and Kate will occasionally have a question, something that's on our mind. But Tuesday, I think what you wanted to talk about was the absurd theories, the absurd conspiracy theories. I guess just by the defense that's putting out there, right? Do you want to get us started with that, or?
Yeah, so what I thought would be kind of interesting and fun to do, a little bit more lighthearted, hopefully, but I was thinking about how it's the famous quote that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect case for that because we have an either or situation, right? Either the drunk driver did actually reverse into the man that she quote unquote fucking hates, and or she was framed and they were able to point a bunch of evidence at her. I think in order, and I assume you guys probably are all on board somewhere with this, but in order to make a claim of all these people framing Karen, it is extraordinary claim. And so I thought it would be interesting to not only analyze maybe some of the old theories that got debunked over time, new theories that are constantly evolving once those get debunked. For instance, I'll give an example that really, I'm kind of beyond the point of getting so angry at some of this stuff because it's so absurd.
Yeah.
But the new one where people are trying to say that Brian Albert got into Brian Higgins' clothes and went to the Canton police station. That's actually Brian Albert, not Brian Higgins. And I'm reading these things online, and I realize there are just massively exploding and evolving theories that just keep coming out. And so just chatting about those, but also maybe even trying to figure out what a conspiracy theory would look like, because I have asked for people to give it to me from beginning to end that fits with the evidence, and not one person has done it yet in these several years now. So anyways, that was my scattered thoughts on this.
I don't know that
Um,
theory. Can you run that? I don't know that conspiracy theory. I hadn't heard that before. Can you run that a little bit by for us? I don't. Has anybody else heard that theory? What is exactly they saying there? Higgins and Albert's clothes. That's
yeah, so the video surveillance at the Canton police station the night that Brian Higgins, drove there to move the cars in that
yeah,
parking lot. And
right.
he went inside the station, like for what, 5 minutes? I forget.
Yeah.
He was actually getting the keys and then walking back out. People are saying it doesn't look like Higgins on the
Oh,
surveillance and
so
that
they're
it
saying
could,
it's really Brian Albert on the surveillance there?
yeah.
That's
I
a
don't
good
know
one.
how that would make their theory I mean, what would be the point of that?
Yeah.
But I don't know. It reminds me of those glasses you put on, it's got like the mustache and the disguise, and it's like, a sweatshirt to disguise him into Brian Higgins. It just cracked me up.
Anybody want to react to that? Anybody heard that or any add their own that they've heard?
I've not
Je-
I've not heard that one at all. That's the first time.
I did see that one. I think it's like, just they have to continue to one up each other with these crazy theories. It's the only way that they can get any attention, right?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of sunk cost fallacy, I think, going on right now. So, because yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I think the only person they've been able to draw, I hate to even say that they have because they really haven't, but the only person that has anything that would even resemble a little bit of a plausible motive in theory would be Brian Higgins. And he doesn't for several reasons, glaring reasons, from the texts to to Karen's data. Obviously Brian Higgins didn't do anything wrong, but Brian Albert, they haven't been able to draw out one like thread of a motive for him at all.
Jen, and this is Jen Coffindaffer from Breaking the Case with Jen Coffindaffer. If anybody wants, please check her and go subscribe to her channel. Jen, are you hearing these kind of crazy theories in other cases too that you've been involved with, either as an investigator or just covering?
Certainly covering, I mean, craziness in the Brian Koberger case. I'm so afraid that the FKR pink shirts are going to come over to that afterwards just to continue with their, thrive, the way they thrive on just this whole conspiracy nut job approach to cases. But yeah, I hear them, and honestly, they just go in one ear and out the other. I try not to get distracted by them. I did do a post a day, kind of the top 10, just inherently. And somebody said, you don't even know what inherent means. Like pretty much using the word the way I mean it. But it's so hard when you've chased facts for 30 plus years and you're still chasing facts. And I really think this is part of it was a lot of the YouTube lawyers is know the law and they don't know the facts. And it doesn't behoove them to know them because they want the FKR cult to jump their numbers. And so they just ride the train with fallacy. And for me, I just shake my head and move on.
Such a great point. And one of the things I was talking about with somebody this morning is how, so when early on in this case, so I'd say almost a year before I was ever going on court TV and reading this conspiracy theory put out by the defense through Turtle Boy, I don't come from a background of law enforcement, forensic data. I've never taken a criminology course, and so what I want is experts to explain these things to me, and I didn't know where to turn. And so I initially did try out Court TV. And what I found was they were getting in experts that had a name. They had built their name on some other case. Maybe they had been a prosecutor related to Murdaugh or some other case. But these people would come on and talk about the Karen Reed case. They were brought on because of their name, because of what they were attached to. And they came on because of the exposure that it gave them. But they clearly knew nothing about the case. They hadn't researched any of the evidence. And so the commentary that I tended to get was I'd here found to be useless. But not only that, I wondered if, because a lot of these people are trying to get their name out there, they're probably defense attorneys at this point in their career. And so there's an inclination to try to lean towards establishing yourself as pro-defendant. Are you guys? Does that make sense to you guys? So they kind of are already slanting towards Karen, just kind of for their own selfish reasons.
Well, I think most of them are defense attorneys that are speaking up. I mean,
Right.
you find defense attorneys a dime a dozen. And I think a lot of them, I mean, say a lot of them, but there's a good portion of them that are very vocal, that kind of use their law degree as a form of authority, which, you know, it's great to have a law degree. We need lawyers. We need to seek their, you know, their legal advice in many areas, but we need to remember that a moral compass does not come with a law degree.
Right.
And good intentions does not come with a law degree. And we see this, and what happens is they go on and they talk about this case at a surface level. And we all know, when we heard about this case the very first time, that we hear things out of context. That's how this case was marketed. We all kind of heard things that were like, what? Like, this sounds weird. And that's when we start looking in, and either you can go down that rabbit hole, or you can start looking deeper at the primary sources and the documents, and noticing that these things are not in context. And I'll give you an example of one of them. Is it was a very vocal person on Twitter, and not the blogger, but another one, a female, who perpetuated this fact that John vomited inside his pants. And if you go and people be like, whoa, how do you do that if you were hit by a car? How
Right.
do you vomit on your
Yeah.
pants? Yeah, in your pants. And I remember thinking, like, that's a good question. And
Right.
I went to the document and I looked, and that's not what the document says. It
Right.
said the clothes were, and named all the items of clothes, and they were saturated in fluid. They were saturated in vomit and blood and
Right.
water, because he was under he was under snow for hours,
Right.
you know, and water dilutes, water spreads, clothing absorbs. I mean, this is like 6th grade science here that I want to knock my head on the wall.
And this is I think you're talking about, well, I guess you weren't comfortable saying her name, but ML,
Oh,
and she's perpetuated
no,
nothing. Oh, okay.
was it
Because
different?
she was talking about that a lot too, and also perpetuating the idea of the missing shoe, the switched socks, and missing shoelaces, missing baseball card, all that stuff that it proved out to be false. And she has not that I know of, has ever corrected or learned anything from it. So I just want to also say welcome to Matt. Thank you, the OG, for being here. And this program was Tuesday's Gazette's idea, and she's looking for more humor, so that's why we need you. And the topic the topic that we want, not to put pressure on you, but
No
the
pressure.
the topic that she wanted to discuss was absurd theories absurd conspiracy theories around the defense in this case. So if you want to take off to talk about any of those subjects.
I mean, there's enough of them. So I heard one, the reason that, this is a wild one, but I'm hearing like a lot of people that are just picking up the case now. I was scrolling through TikTok, and there's just more and more people that are picking up, that are saying things that have been debunked for years. Like, oh, well, the judge has a beach house that she rents to all these people, and she knows all the people in the house. I'm like, that's coming back again. But to talk about the vomit in the underwear, there was a theory that, Chloe attacked him as soon as he got out of the car, and Karen saw this, and she, as she was pulling away, and she put the car into reverse to kind of save him from the dog, and she hit the dog, and the dog took the phone and ran up and down the stairs with it in its mouth, or swallowed it or something. And that's the flights of stairs. And she was so drunk that she just drove away and left John there. And the dog threw up the phone on his waistband, and then he rolled over and the phone was under him.
Wait, is that real?
Yes.
You didn't just make that. I thought you didn't just ad-lib that right now.
There's a lot of detail.
So we're
To
one
hear it
step away
once.
from aliens.
I mean, to be able to explain all with the data that we have now, like the theories are getting like pretty slim. It's either you ignore half of the evidence and come up with these theories, which is what a lot of people do. They'll be like, no, this is my theory. Forget about the timestamps of when you get out of the car. Forget about this. Forget about that. But this is what I want my theory to be. But like to still have a theory within the context. I remember this one because that's kind of in the context of what the data is currently. Not really the stairs. I mean, that happened before, but I don't know. It's just exhausting because these people are saying this like with their whole chest. And I'm just like, are you really that stupid? Like, it's kind of like sick.
As anonymous mass lawyer likes to say, how do sentient human beings believe in these things? You know, he uses that phrase a lot, and it's exasperating. I want to bring Red Sky in. So because she was a practicing lawyer, later I have some more pointed questions for her, such as about defense strategy and will they bring in Michael Proctor, will they bring in Brian Higgins and Brian Albert? But I also, just to bring her in on this topic, so Red, is there anything, what are some of the wilder conspiracy theories you've heard on this, or do you have any reaction to these theories, especially as a former trial lawyer? Anything?
I think the conspiracy theories, I mean, in regards to them, all I'm going to say is the defense doesn't have to prove anything here. They just have to poke holes in the state's case. So by them bringing the conspiracy theories in, they can really bring them in as much as they want. They can be as wild as they want and just hope that one of them will stick with one of these jurors. And that would be enough that they poke some they create some reasonable doubt here. So in a case where you have a lot of evidence, they're going to really be throwing everything they can against the wall and just be hoping maybe one of these conspiracy theories sticks with one of them. So, I mean, what else are they going to really do, right? They're doing the best they can to create a defense for their client.
Right. Dan, how do you compare, or is there any comparison to these theories and what you're seeing in the Kohlberger case?
Well, in the Kohlberger case, there was theories of somebody jumping out of a plane, parachuting onto the third floor, going in that way. There was secret tunnels underneath the house. So many different things. But, to kind of touch on what you guys were saying as far as this last crazy theory, I think that the pants are a big indicator of what happened. The back pocket being ripped and the phone being underneath of him tells me that that his phone was in his back pocket, and that when he landed, he must have landed pretty high up, meaning a lot of force on his head too. But that as he's getting hit and knocked into the air, so is the phone in his back pocket. And as he's landing, the phone is ripping out of the back pocket. And that's how it's also underneath of him. And you can also see the sliding marks on the pants with the grass stains. I didn't watch the first trial at all, but I've seen probably about 99% of the second trial. And when I saw those pants and I saw that to me, it explained why the phone was underneath of him. But to come up with this elaborate story, just kind of, it's insane. It's insane to come up with this elaborate story. And not to mention, there's no dog DNA on anything. And so how in the hell is this dog taking any phone inside or outside without leaving its DNA, much less biting anybody either? So it's all just strange. But there's definitely some crazy conspiracies in the Brian Kohlberger case. They're just as wild. I'll tell you, just as wild.
I got a crazy one here that just came to mind, that this will really test the OGs like Kate and Jen. Jen probably wouldn't have heard this, but I think Kate might have, maybe Matt. So there was a wild theory going back in the summer of 2023 when people were trying to explain the lack of that John's phone stopped moving at 12:32 and 16 seconds. And somebody came up with this weird idea, but it was being circulated that the killers slingshotted John O'Keefe from the house to where he landed on the lawn. Did you guys remember hearing that?
I never heard that one.
Yeah, it was out of Brian's window, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You know what's ironic that I think is worth mentioning here is that the defense's own theory of a conspiracy kind of would have to include Karen. Because if their conspiracy is that Higgins was somehow jealous, the text well, the one that, murderers say, and he decides that he wants to bring John back to Brian Albert's house and rough him up a bit. They invite Karen too. And so either they plan on beating Karen up too, or Karen knows that they want to
Right.
beat him up and she ditches him and leaves him there and lets him get beat up.
Yeah.
So technically, if you want to make a conspiracy start working, it would have to include Karen.
Right. Jen, they don't. So there was a really good one of the things that I've been harping on is the unreasonable doubt, or the abuse of reasonable doubt that seems to really go on a lot of the lawyers, not just YouTube lawyers, but on court TV, trying to turn every little thing into that. And so Anonymous Masked Lawyer has these excellent articles, and he's kind of picked up on that theme a few days ago. And he gave a great example. He said, so you have the medical examiner, there's a shooting, there's a man dies of a gunshot wound to the head, and the medical examiner can't rule out that it was self-inflicted. Reasonable doubt, they would all say, right? But when you look at the totality of the evidence, the defendant that's on trial was seen shortly before at the scene near the victim with a gun, and when he was arrested, had gun residue from the gun that was what matched to the killing or the shooting on his hand. So when you look at the totality of evidence, there's no reasonable doubt. But this is what's going on here is that nobody ever looks on that side at the totality of evidence, including many of the lawyers that we see on court TV. They just so quick to go to reasonable doubt. What do you think?
No, it's a great point. I mean, this panel, there's a lot of very smart people on here. I see the humor in Matt and, all the proclivities of you and Kate and Tuesday's writing. We have an attorney on here. I am a simple mind. All I need to look at are the statements that Karen Reed has made, the fragments that are in John O'Keefe's shirt, the DNA that is on the taillight, the hair, body hair that was found, and the information from the vehicle combined with his cell phone information. I'm just very simple. I'm Occam's razor, and none of that can ever convince me that anyone else is responsible for his death, period. And all that other stuff I hear, I just can't even describe it. It's like noise. It's crap. And but I'm more simple. I love Tuesday's article because she gets down and dirty, and I love listening to you all. And Dan, that goes for you too, but I'm a simple mind.
So here's a question that just everybody and anybody can take on, no particular order. These are things that I've talked, I know a lot about in the past with Matt on the show, but was there ever any parts of this conspiracy theory, or at least some of the odd things about this case, that people took seriously, even for a brief time, weeks or months? I know me and Matt had kind of an evolution, but anybody can jump in on that. Is there anything that you might now consider either debunked or maybe even silly that at one time you considered possible?
For me, I think it was so like I said, I didn't watch the first trial, probably maybe 10 to 15%, and that's really pushing it. But I understand why a lot of people would have looked at the 227 search without knowing the actual evidence behind it and the technical stuff behind it that showed that it was actually just a tab that was pulled up. Once you learn that and you understand that it was a tab that was pulled up and that the actual search was at 6 o'clock in the morning, that should really make you put into question a lot of what the defense is trying to say, because they're trying to pinpoint something and something that is factually a search that happened at 6 o'clock in the morning, and trying to pinpoint it on this woman. and making it seem like she made this search at 2-something, part of this conspiracy. Well, I mean, if they're lying about that and they know about it, and yet they're still pushing it, and they're still pushing it to this day, then that should tell you a lot about what their case probably entails.
Yeah, but all those people that were so compelled by that search refuse to look at Karen's car data now. What's more like damning? The search, which Kevin can attest, I did not, even before I understood the tab and the science behind it, just accepting that a search happened at 2:27 a.m., how long to die in cold, did not move the needle for me without anything else. People search weird stuff all the time. What people don't do usually all the time is back up their car 75%, of the pedal to the ground, 24 miles an hour, at the same time that their boyfriend stops moving forever. That is not such a common occurrence.
Right. And to your point too, though, and it kind of goes back to what you guys were saying before about like some of the mainstream media is still talking about Karen Read as innocent. I think it's more than or not just the fact that it's, falling in love with the conspiracy as much as nobody wants to admit they're wrong in the situation. And I think that a lot of people are sticking to their guns about 227 because, well, if they admit that was wrong, then maybe perhaps they're admitting that they were supporting somebody who took the life of a police officer.
Good point. Red Sky, is there any part of this conspiracy theory that or any questions raised by the defense that over time, maybe they've been answered since then, but once bugged you?
Yeah. So I feel like cloaking yourself under the guise of a federal investigation that you self-initiated was incredibly suspect to me.
Did the existence of the federal investigation ever trouble you to say maybe there's something here? Maybe there's a cover-up.
Honestly, initially, I honestly had my doubts about it. To be honest with you, I found it strange that there would be an ongoing federal investigation over something like this. And I'll be honest with you, I felt like it was incredibly suspect because in order for the feds to move so fast on something like this, I thought that it would be a public corruption case. And I felt like there was some defense involvement in it. I really did. And it turns out that it was true. I had this feeling about it. And I'll be honest with you, I also felt it was like incredibly suspect that the blogger had been blogging about it for so long, but only admitted that he was speaking. His source for it was, the defendant, and really only admitted that to his audience when he was kind of forced to before it was going to become public. I felt that was kind of, I don't know. It wasn't really on the up and up, in my opinion. And yeah, I don't know. Those are some things that were kind of concerning about it to me.
Some of the other OGs are texting me some stories from way back, and some of these are weird. So there was one with Colin was always running around the neighborhood with a chainsaw. Anybody ever hear that one? Kate, did you ever hear that?
No, nope.
And this other one I can attest to. So this is a stranger one too that I heard when I went to Dedham last year, and this was that. I don't usually repeat this in the show because you never know when someone's going to believe it or take it seriously, and it's unfair to the people. But it's so absurd. Maybe I can say it because I think hopefully Brian Albert would laugh about this. But they were telling me that, and then I did actually confirm this. Not that it happened, but that the legend's been around for a while. That Brian Albert had one time, nothing to do with this case, gone into like a mobile gas station, convenience store type thing, and there was a little foreign clerk there that whatever gave him the wrong change or he had some kind of issue with him. And Brian reached over the counter, grabbed the guy, dragged him into his car, and the little guy was never seen again.
Yes, he kidnapped him. Yeah, I heard that one. That's bananas. Yes.
I know. So you have heard that one, yeah. And so when I was writing the book, I came to my own theory that the Karen Read conspiracy, that the Karen Read third-party culprit conspiracy theory evolved organically on the ground before Karen was arrested as kind of an urban legend. And I was able to prove that very quickly. And so we got some texts for right before Karen was arrested, the day before. So John died Saturday and Karen was arrested on Tuesday. And no offense, Tuesday. And so on Monday, this text went around that was saying that, and I got screenshots of it. And what it said was it was actually, I think it was posted in a Facebook group, like one of the Canton Facebook groups. And what it said was that that John was beat up inside the house by Brian Albert, a federal agent, and and Brian's nephew. Said he was, I think it said he was beat up with a baseball bat, if I remember right. But the third part of it, that same person told that story about Brian stealing the convenience store worker and the guy disappearing. So those urban legend stuff were already there, like very early on, right out of the gate. Sorry to leave you hanging. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that. Tuesday, you got anything to compete with that, Tuesday?
I made a list of some of the old
Good.
theories.
Good.
Just right before. I mean, not a ton, but I was trying to jot some down. Of course, we had the missing belt, the missing this, the missing that, and that was automatically an assumption that Karen was being framed instead of an alternative idea of, maybe the belt was in the ambulance, like there was other options, right? And then we later found out that the belt was attached to the pants.
Right.
It's not a big deal. I mean, if you are going to overanalyze things, you are always going to find something. And I correlated this. I wrote an article for the Prosecutors podcast, and it's called True Crime Times. And Jason, I forget his last name right now, but they have this blog, and I related this to what do you call it? When you think you're sick?
Hypochondriac.
Hypochondriac. Thank you. So we've all been in a situation where we have some weird symptoms and we go and we start Googling our symptoms on WebMD. And it's like, it could be just a rash, a dry skin rash, or you could be dying and will be dead in 10 days. And so we've all been there, and it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole, especially when our emotions are involved and we're panicked and we're anxious and we're whatever we have going on. We want to jump to the worst case scenario. And this is what's happening here in a lot of these cases, is there's these conspiracy people that are like, oh my God, there's a missing belt, you guys. Here we go. Proctor did it. But one of the other things I wrote down was the blanket. So I recall a conspiracy pusher on Twitter making a big deal that, and this was before trial 1, that Jen and Carrie had put a blanket over or around, John's head. And that was the proof that Jen went into the house before she said she went into the house, and she's lying. Why would she have a blanket? And then we learn that it was from Carrie's car. These blankets were baby blankets from her car because she works with children.
Yeah. And that also seems to possibly explain why one of the firefighters, I forget his name, but where he believed that John was wearing proper winter clothing, he may have looked at those blankets around the head and confused that as, some kind of a hood or something like that.
It's a good point. Yeah, for sure. Or just that his sweatshirt was two-toned, and at the time it was wet, and it was, so who knows why he thought that. But again, there's these anomalies that don't matter. They don't matter because no one's perfect. Witnesses are not perfect.
Right.
In fact, eyewitness testimonies are the number one reason for wrongful convictions.
Yep.
We want to help. I mean, I truly believe that every witness in this case wants to help. Is their memory perfect? No.
Right.
Like how many times you look out a window no, I wouldn't be able to tell you guys that. How many times I
Yeah.
looked at a window mundanely last night.
This is why Jen calls me the bricks and mortar guy, because I'm very dubious about eyewitness testimony that is not backed by other eyewitness testimony, or is not closely mirrored by physical facts. So eyewitness testimony is usually, to me, open to multiple interpretations. So it's very difficult to work off. There are some exceptions to that. So an example would be the call to Kerry Roberts, because so did Karen really say John's dead, and then say maybe he was stuck by a plow? Well, that's corroborated because Kerry then called the police station, and I don't think Hank chose to use it in this trial, but he did in the first trial. She called the hospital. Now, why would she call the hospital if that really kind of confirms that that's exactly what Karen, or something similar to that, is what she said? But and Jen and Kerry is not someone that could possibly have any motive against John. She's pretty much a member of the O'Keefe family. So, but for me, I do. That's why Jen calls me the bricks and mortar guy. I like to stick to those things that aren't so much open to interpretation.
Yeah, no.
The items I listed off earlier on your previous question, those are all brick and mortar.
Yeah.
You can
listen
for every single one I named. And so Kevin, in a sense, we're much alike in that regard, because that's how you make a case. And circumstantial evidence is so much stronger in many times than direct evidence, because direct evidence involves eyewitnesses that are often mistaken. Circumstantial, if I go to bed and I look out, my lawn is beautifully green, and I wake up in the morning and it is covered with snow, I do not have to see the snow come down to know it's snow. And that is the exact correlation for circumstantial evidence, and that's why it's so strong.
Red Sky, do you want to apply your legal experience to talk about circumstantial evidence and what percentage of cases maybe you've seen rely on that, or primarily on circumstantial evidence? Any thoughts on that?
I don't really have any thoughts on it, to be honest with you. I mean, your case is your case, and every case is different. And the strength of the evidence is ultimately determined by the jury. I don't really have much to weigh in on that, to be honest with you. Right.
Well, Jen, what percentage of the cases you were involved with involved primarily circumstantial evidence?
Most of the cases, primarily circumstantial. I mean, wiretap cases, you could argue, is more direct evidence.
Yeah.
And then certainly surveillance that we conducted, where we were the witnesses, that's direct testimony with things we saw and filmed and took photographs of. But circumstantial evidence is just as strong. It's just strong in a different way.
Daniel, you were in law enforcement. What are your thoughts on circumstantial evidence?
Circumstantial evidence is like 95% of most cases. Most cases aren't on video, or there's unless there's like a confession or things of that nature. But for the most part, it's the totality of the circumstantial evidence that makes the difference. And it goes back to reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt isn't all doubt. It's, can somebody reasonably say that in order to believe that Karen Reed is innocent in this trial, we would have had to believe that John O'Keefe went into the house and within 4 seconds got beat up and magically teleported outside. And
slingshot.
Yeah. And and there was this one part in the trial where Alan Jackson was saying because of the shoe that it could have fallen off while they were dragging him. However, the shoe was found closer to the road, not between where John O'Keefe's body was found and the house, indicating that the shoe came off at the roadway. And so there's just so much, for me, when it comes to conspiracy theories. One that was told to me was that the reason why there was DNA on Karen's SUV was because there was blood, there was cups with blood in it, and that they were in the Sally Port the entire time. And that Proctor at some point applied the blood DNA onto the car. And then, I go through the trial because, like I said, I didn't watch the first hearing or the first trial. So we start watching this. I start watching the second one, kind of find out that I believe it was one of the lieutenants who pulled it out of the fridge, took it and they photographed it there. but Proctor wasn't even there, I don't believe. And it wasn't just sitting there the entire time. It had been in evidence in a fridge. But that's the kind of stuff that gets spread throughout a lot of this. And it's highly inaccurate. Little bit of truth. Or you have a picture of cups with blood in it, and then masked with a whole lot of fakeness, just to kind of make this thing somewhat make somebody believe in it. And it's ridiculous. I mean, what you have to believe for her to be innocent is, or let me rephrase this: what you have to believe that she didn't hit him. As far as committing the murder aspect of it, I'm still undecided on that part. I'm fairly positive she hit him with that car, though.
You're talking about the second-degree murder part.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Matt, so maybe we could focus for a moment on the conspiracy theories that are floated specifically by the defense team, whether possibly in court, but even just the stuff that we know for a fact that they're floating in social media or in the documentaries or Karen's statements. Any reactions to that stuff, or whether it's effective or not? Will it convince one or two jurors?
I just find it highly suspect. And I feel like anyone that has been following this case for a while, that has seen the evolution of the conspiracies, should be paying attention and should be noticing some things. But Brian Higgins really was not a factor in the first trial. He wasn't somebody that they really pushed a lot of information about. It was always about Colin, about the Alberts, and Jen McCabe. And now suddenly, and I think that Karen had, maybe it was with the feds, maybe it was the proffer, but I think that Karen had some like hope that Higgins would lie for her. I really think that was the hope in the first trial, and that's why he wasn't really implicated too much in the conspiracies. But now it seems like all bets are off, and now it's like Higgins. But like, does Higgins really have the connection with Jen McCabe if they're going to say the house long to die in cold thing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I mean, the fact that he was jealous, but he didn't seem jealous in those messages at all. It seemed like he wasn't that interested, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I feel like he kind of was giving her the ear, like, you know, she came over his house, he wouldn't even go to her house, and she came over, and whether they got together or not, he says no, but it seems like maybe she was rejected, and that's why she really did not want to go to Fairview, and she was delaying going with the group. She you know, was getting lost on purpose. She did not want to go there because she felt rejected by him.
That's what I said in Body of the Snow.
Really?
On there. That's funny. We think alike. I really believe that. I think that was at least one of the main reasons. Is just kind of the embarrassment and everything with him being there. She saw the car there, and she didn't want any part of it.
Interesting. I watched the documentary. I don't remember that, but I hadn't really thought about it until Matt just said it, that possibility that's why she didn't want to go there. But yeah, although I guess we can understand just all the basic, well, I can understand why she wouldn't want to be at the party with Higgins and John at the same time. So that's the part that I've thought about, but not from the point of view of rejection. It's awkward if you're flirting with Higgins and maybe more, and at the same time, now you're there with John at the same time, and Higgins and John are friends. So yeah, I did think about that.
And she's wasted. People don't think clearly when they're wasted. I mean, that was probably even more exacerbated, her rejection and uncomfortableness. That's what I think anyway.
So I want to ask this question, and hopefully everybody will take this on. I know Kate will have a good answer for this, but I definitely want to get to Red Sky because this goes to the legal aspect of it. So we've all been kind of talking about this at different levels the last week, but what is the defense plan when it comes to assuming the state does not have Proctor or Higgins or Brian Albert testify, and that seems to be the case, what is the defense's strategy? What should their strategy be? What are some of the things that they'll have in mind? If you're ready, Red, we'll go to you first, and if not, we'll go right to Kate, and we'll go around the board.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, what they will do, I don't know what they'll do. You know, they have an excellent defense team, excellent attorneys. You know, in my opinion, some of the best in the nation. So what they'll do, I don't know. They're going to do what they deem is best to do. I mean, what would I do? Just me, the little guy. I would not put Proctor, Albert, or Higgins on that stand. If they do that, Brennan is going to be able to cross-examine them. Now, in Massachusetts, okay, they follow the minority rule, okay? You can exceed the scope of direct. So the witness can be cross-examined on any matter that is relevant to the case. The only limitation of the scope of cross-exam is that it should not unfairly prejudice a party, either by being too restrictive or too broad in its line of inquiry. Mass has discretion over subject matters discussed on cross, but the judges may be less likely to sustain an objection to questioning that exceeds the scope of direct exam. So under the minority rule, a party in a court case in Mass can introduce evidence that bolsters their case. So, this is a very dangerous thing if they decide to bring forth these witnesses. This is basically giving Brennan free range in his cross exams. I would be I would have a lot of trepidation in doing this if I were to call these witnesses. I would not want to do that. I mean, if they want to do that, good on them, but I would be very apprehensive about doing that.
Let me just continue with Red for a moment, since she's our legal counsel. So drilling down on it, they obviously would want to get in Michael Proctor's text messages. So are they trying to explore other means to get those in? Will the defense have other ways to get them in? And if not, does that force them?
I don't know if I missed something, but I thought when they were examining, I hope other people can weigh in, because I don't know if I'm in a fever dream. I thought when they were examining Buchanan, I thought they got a lot of his text messages in. Am I in a fever dream here?
They got some in. I think the ones that have not been in would be like the ones with his group of friends where he's saying like, the sexist comments and, oh, she should unalive herself, maybe. Anything to his wife wasn't in. So it was just the stuff about like looking for nudes. To be honest, like maybe they want those in, but I don't think that shows any type of cover up at all. So, I mean, they're risking a lot to bring those in.
Yep. So maybe bring in someone on the text chain who is not him to do that. But I think calling him in is going to open a big door I would not want to go through. That's just me.
Right. So the effort is to get those in, but avoid having them on the stand. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
I'm sorry. We just have opposite views on this. I think they'll call Proctor. I'm about 70% sure they won't, or will. I really am, because he is their Mark Furman. They need him. He was the lead investigator. They need him so that when the jurors look at this and they see all the facts we've discussed here, but they want to say, or they end up saying, it's because of this flawed investigation. So forget the facts. It was the flawed investigation. As you see many people that are sort of neutral on social media, they say, yes, we know she did it. Yes, we see the facts. We agree. But this flawed investigation is why we could never say guilty. And I think that's what the defense will count on, is muddying all that up with him.
They're not calling Proctor. Like as of right now, 100%, they are not calling Proctor. It's not speculation. They are not calling Proctor.
Right.
Summons have already gone out.
Yeah, I don't think they've given him the summons.
When you say they, do you mean, I'm sorry, do you mean the prosecution or the defense?
The defense at this point, and you could kind of see it coming with the questioning with Buchanan, because they tried to get all those texts in, they just couldn't. But as of right now, they're not calling Proctor.
So go ahead, Tuesday. I didn't mean to cut you. Go ahead.
Just my thought.
Tuesday, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry about that. Go ahead. Tuesday, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, you're talking to me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just saying the same thing as Kate. I heard through the grapevine that he has not received a summons, and his friends have received a summons. So I've talked to people, who are, in the legal field, and most of them agree that it would be a bad idea for the defense to call Proctor because of, they can only ask a certain type of question on direct, and Hank would basically eat eat the whole defense alive on cross.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. I think they're in a pickle right now, and I think they're sweating, they're flying by the seat of their pants, and they're probably going through, you know, proctors, cousins, sisters, house cleaners, golf instructors, beach photos right now, trying to find something, you know.
Right.
They want
I
to get
think-
into malfeasance without actually opening him up to any cross, because obviously on cross he could be pretty well rehabilitated, and he's
Right.
also not a state trooper anymore, so God knows what would come out of his mouth.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I think
that's a great point.
I think so. It sounds like you guys all agree in some version of this, is that they want to get, the defense wants to get in those text messages, but doesn't actually want to get him on the stand, which actually kind of, I just want to comment on his performance last year. Outside of those text messages, which he seemed to feel, you know, sincerely contrite for, he actually held up mostly as a witness. He didn't come across as somebody that was lying or planting evidence. So that would be a big, strong argument why the defense doesn't really want him on the stand. And that's before even Hank gets a chance to rehabilitate him on cross. Do you guys agree with that? Or
Yeah, I think that he would be pretty easily rehabilitated on cross. And again, like, you can't call your own witness to impeach them, right, Red?
right?
I'm not mistaken on that.
Nope, you're correct.
Dan, do you have any? We left you last. I don't remember if we got to Matt on this question too, but do you guys any reaction to this?
You know, to me, I'd be surprised if the defense didn't call Proctor, but it sounds like they're not. And you make some valid points to that. I think as far as what the defense is going to try to harp on is they're going to go on and, you know, lean on ARCA. They're going to try to lean on those guys to say that there wasn't a collision. I think that based on what occurred in, what is it, Vordier or something like that, and what the judge said about allowing a very robust cross-examination, I think they're gonna that's not gonna work out for them too well. But they're probably gonna lean on that. They're gonna lean on the fact that, or try to muddy the waters as much as possible. What do you? I wrote something down, but I can't. I don't remember where I put it. But for the for the most part, I think that's what they're gonna lean on, and try to. I mean, I'd be surprised if they. I guess the goal is going to be to call everybody around Proctor to try to talk about what their experiences was with him, and but I think the jury is going to wonder as this trial goes on and as the defense goes on. They've heard his name quite a bit. Why isn't he being called? And I don't know if that's a very good advantage point for the state.
Matt, if you want to pick up on the Proctor thing, but also you can lead us into the next natural question about Higgins and Albert. Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the strategy in this trial is a lot different. So Lally's strategy was, you know, debunk everything up front so that when the defense case, when they get to their case, they don't have all this stuff. We can already have it like vetted out. Whereas Brennan is like, I'm not giving you anything. Right. You're going to have nothing. And you are going to have to build your case on your own. And so, like, I think the strategy is good. I mean, I think Proctor is a good witness, but if they do bring in his friends to talk about text messages, Brennan can still bring him back on rebuttal. So, you know, he has the advantage of being able to bring him back. And I think, you know, the same thing goes for Higgins and Albert. I mean, I just think that the things that the prosecution is failing on is being clear on some of these items. And if you think about what the juror said in the first trial, it wasn't about that they didn't buy the conspiracy, but there were certain things that they weren't clear on. And I think the glass is one that they kind of messed up. And, you know, on his redirect, he didn't get a clear, because that's all I'm hearing is it's not the same glass. That's all that's on the internet. Because it was not a physical match, which means it didn't fit together like a puzzle, but it was an instrumental match, and he didn't really clear that up. And on the chalk that the jury's going to have in the deliberation room, because that testimony is very confusing, all they see is Proctor's name in a column. I don't know why that was allowed by the judge, but this is the judge we're dealing with.
Red, do you want to take on the Higgins and Brian Albert of this, whether the wisdom of bringing them on to the stand by the defense?
Yeah, I don't think, it's a great idea. Again, they have an excellent defense team. They will know better than I what they should do, but I would not touch that. Again, Brennan's going to have great leeway in cross exam, nearly unfettered in Massachusetts. I wouldn't go there. But Matt touched upon something that, I find sometimes, people who are for Karen Reed show up in the chat and they say, oh, how come the state is hiding Proctor? How come they're not calling him as a witness? Something I would like to address is the state doesn't have to call anybody. They just have to prove their case, how they deem best. In my opinion, and I have a lot of respect for Lally. He's an excellent prosecutor, but something I feel he almost got he kind of got out in the weeds last time. He was trying to disprove the defense's case instead of focusing on proving his own. And a lot of the things he did, he should have brought in as rebuttal evidence, like when the defense was making their case. So what is rebuttal evidence and when is it proper? This is stuff that's admitted at the discretion of the court. It gives a party a chance to respond to new evidence that's presented after the state rests their case. So a good example of this will be, for instance, the dog bite testimony, if the defense introduces it, or any new ARCA testing if they introduce it. So the Commonwealth can properly seek to introduce rebuttal evidence in the form of witnesses or new evidence that's presented in the defense's case. So when Lally was kind of getting out in the weeds, like a lot of this stuff, when he was trying to disprove the conspiracy case, he was doing in his case. He should have waited to introduce any new stuff in the defense's case. That's why it was all kind of a big mess. And that's what, Brennan is doing differently and properly here. So that's why it seems like it's a new case and the Commonwealth is trying to hide things. No, it's not that. It's trial practice and procedure, and he's a master at it. That's why, it seems so different to people. It's because he's really a master at it. He's doing it. He's the best of the best.
Tuesday, we got Higgins, Brian Albert, butt dials, the Chloe aspect of that, Brian's testimony, Brian Albert's testimony with that, taking the dog out back when he got home. We have Brian, there seemed to be some discrepancy between him and his wife about where they were looking in the house at showing Brian Higgins medals Brian, not Brian Jr., but one of the other kids, Marine stuff. And then an important thing too is, Higgins is someone who drove by where John was and didn't see him. I think on the defense bringing in Brian Higgins and Brian Albert.
Well, I think the defense made a big error recently by introducing the surveillance video footage of Higgins at the Canton Police Department, because he's there at the time that the other witnesses are leaving the Albert house. And we can see on that video footage what the weather and the visual conditions are at that time and how much snow there actually was. Huh?
What was the weather? I think I was in the hospital for that. What was the weather at that moment?
It was snowing like crazy. You could tell that by the direction of it that, there was wind. You can tell, the ground was covered in snow. The cars were covered. Oh, I don't know how much the cars were covered, if anyone else remembers, but it was clearly a moment where you're walking and you're not, you're not looking around how you would in the middle of a sunny day, so it gave me insight to be like, I already would assume that if I was walking out of a house in the middle of the night and it was snowing, I'm going to have a very limited mechanical maneuvers to get to the car, right? I'm probably not going to be checking out my neighbor's house. I'm probably going to have my head down and be talking to my friends and watching my step, as I'm walking down the stairs and stuff. But once you see that video, it's possible that Hank could show something like that in the closing. and be like, this is the time that the witnesses were leaving. This
So what
is
about butt
how
dials? Are they going to bring these guys in to this, so they can introduce butt dials and all the other potential third party culprity kind of conspiracy stuff?
I think they tried their hardest to bring that in through other witnesses,
Okay.
and they failed. I don't know if they would bring in Brian Albert and Higgins, because what else are they going to ask them? I mean, they have calls they don't remember, 9-second calls, drunk friends, and you're going to bring them in for that? I don't know, but I think, in my opinion, they did what they could with what they had. And right now, their biggest goal, they're putting all their aim into ARCA again. And that's it. I mean, they've got in there, I think they've got a doctor that, according to Karen, is, gonna counteract whatever the director and founder of the Neuro Center in Miami, who's badass.
Oh yeah.
And very clear, and
Yeah.
she thinks somehow her expert is going to discount him somehow.
That was a really good point that I had never thought of about the guests at the house leaving at the same time that they were showing. You guys probably discussed this during the trial. I didn't see that part. So, but that was a really good point. Thank you for that. Jen, what do you think on this? And if you want to build on Tuesdays or react to that too, but what do you, Brian Albert, Brian Higgins, are they going to be on the stand by the defense?
Oh, you're on mute.
Muted because somebody in chat said that somebody had a loud mic that was coming over, so I thought I better mute when I'm not talking. Fine, because I am in the middle of a thunderstorm. But
Oh, I hear it. Yeah.
You hear it?
Yeah. I just heard the thunder. Yeah.
So, you have to think what would be the purpose. And correct me if I'm wrong, Red Sky, but they have to. They can present witnesses that would speak to facts and evidence. So there are some parameters there, and we have not heard, at least that I recall, a bottom line by Judge Cannoni in terms of the third party culprit. Remember, she said it was okay if it sort of comes up in some way organically, but she didn't want it to come out certainly in opening, and she had very strict limitations. So it sort of, I think that's a consideration, but I just don't know what they really bring to the table. I agree that ARCA is the arc of their case. They want to show that there is no way that he was hurt by a car collision. And like I said, to me, what I think could really muddy things up is Proctor, but everybody disagrees with me except for Dan. A teeny bit agrees with me. And Boundless didn't even make a joke about my comment. What do you think, Matt?
About Proctor? I mean,
Yeah, you can't take Furman out of OJ. How do you take Proctor out of?
I don't know. Like, to me, honestly, Proctor comes off to me as just like a goofy frat boy, and I just don't think that is what they want the jury to see. They want the jury to see a boogeyman. I think it's better for the defense to not put him on at all, because he doesn't come off as that.
I mean, I know what you're saying, and it really comes down to, I think they're going to want those messages in, because particularly the two messages, one where he says he hopes he offs himself or she offs herself, words to that effect, and then the other one where he uses the C word, and I just think that it's like using the N word. You can't use the C word as a cop, but of course he thought he was talking privately. And but it still makes him look like he would have a motive to otherwise change the direction of an investigation. Believe me, I'm I feel terrible for Proctor, and I truly think that when this is all over, a couple years down the line, he may get his job back because they have a very poor case. I think when you look at other people who have said similar things, who have had alcohol on the job, and who have driven their vehicles, their police vehicles with alcohol, in the bureau, you're gone. But in most police departments, you get another chance, another bite at the apple. What do you think, Dan? I mean, didn't you see a lot of people on the local departments do some stupid crap, and they kept their jobs?
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen some people do some stupid stuff. However, in this scenario, I'll be honest, the law enforcement officers are held to a higher standard, and so even if he thought he was on private text messages, he really shouldn't have done that. Now, him being an idiot and him doing that, does that mean that there's some sort of conspiracy? I don't think so. I think that somebody can do something wrong. Like, two things can be right at the same time. Somebody could have said something wrong. Somebody could have gotten involved in their emotions. I've often said this before. There was a situation where I arrested a man who had SA'd his daughter and stepdaughter. Both were under the ages of 10. I had some strong words about him after the fact. When people ask me about him, like, hey, how was it? What did it, what was it like when you arrested him? What was the scene like? Just people that were aware of it. And, I called him a POS. I've called him a lot of things. And that's what I feel, and still to this day feel about it. He pled out, and so he's now convicted on the registry. But if you got to look at it from that light, and I think you guys make a point about his appearance, because I didn't see the first trial. I didn't see him testify. So to me, I don't know what he would say. I'm interested in what he would say. And I think that if I was on the jury, I'm not sure if I feel comfortable not hearing what he has to say, if you're the Commonwealth.
Oh, you don't want to put him on as the Commonwealth. I mean, I know you didn't see the first trial, but it just, it looked really bad.
Right. But aren't you kind of like then now stuck with what the defense is claiming of his image without putting him on?
Yeah, but there's not a lot of, I think it's so, side story compared to everything else we're hearing and seeing. I hope, Dan, anyway, that I don't think he has at all made the impact that the defense would have wanted, or the impact he made last trial. What do you guys think that watched both?
Yeah, I don't think he has at all. Well, they haven't been able to pull much of it out though, because like they managed to get in the text chain between the troopers there, right? But all they really have out of that is that he called her an artard and made a joke about no nudes yet. And it was very dispassionate. He couldn't really be crossed on it that much, but you kind of could because he didn't write the text. So it just sort of hung there. I don't think they don't really have a lot. They keep mentioning that he's fired. Buchanan kind of baked in a reason to not call him into his testimony when he said we work in pairs in case somebody's unavailable to testify or has been fired. So I know they need to get those other texts in somehow. And right now, again, like just as it stands, they're trying to get it in every way that they can without calling Proctor.
You mean the prosecution? Because that's all.
No. The defense. The defense is there. They tried to get it in through Buchanan. They now want to get it in through the friends on the chain. They want to get it in any way that they can without having Proctor be called.
And I know a lot of you all there, Tuesday, you, Kate, others that are there. I mean, people are text messaging me, Jen, he didn't get a summons. But Red Sky backed me up on this. We've called people the day before. Just because you don't have your summons there, you could still be called in a trial. There's no hard and fast. I'm just saying what I would do as the defense.
I think it really boils down to whether or not they can get them in through the friends. Obviously, that's the swing that they're taking first. I don't even know how that would work because it's like, how much can they testify to somebody else's texts?
I just had to step away for a moment because the dog. So this is like a story from Daniel's neck of the woods. The dogs were going crazy, so I'm like making sure there's not a problem. They're in the backyard, and what it was is this beautiful golden deer that is right up to the fence, and is not at all is like 5 feet away from the dogs. I think the largest deer I've seen out here. We get them pretty regularly in the back, but this one is not intimidated at all by the dogs, and it's just beautiful to watch. It just wouldn't even move. It was just standing there, kind of looking at them. Fully grown deer. You see sometimes a curious young deer, but this is like a full grown one. It's just amazing to see. Thought I'd share that with you.
Cool.
Sorry,
You
I
know,
didn't mean to. Go ahead, Dan. Anything else you guys want to keep going?
I saw in my chat that somebody was saying to the effect that one of the things that Proctor put out there was that Brian Albert wasn't going to get in trouble because he's a cop. Something to the effect like the homeowner's not going to get in trouble because he's a cop. If I was Hank, what you do in Cross in that scenario is, when was that said? Was that said before Karen Reed was arrested? Or was that said after she was arrested, after there was evidence found, after the direction of that evidence pointed in Karen Reed's direction? Because at the end of the day, it's one thing to say something like that the moment that he's contacted and put in there, and another thing if it was a little bit down the line. I honestly don't know when it was said.
It was
when was
sorry
that
not
said?
to cut you off, but the problem with that is that they're cutting off the next text. So he didn't just say in a vacuum, nope, he's a Boston cop, he's not going to catch any shit. He followed that up with, and by all accounts, he's done nothing wrong. So you can surmise from that what that was written after they had vetted out Brian Albert.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds like they did an investigation. An officer did go into the house. They did talk to them. Just because Proctor didn't go in there and then also ask again and ask to go in there and violate this dude's rights, it's just a bunch of crap to me. Now, I did have one question I wanted to ask you guys about, and it was one of my followers left a super chat asking about the voicemails that Karen left. I think they're going to lean on those voicemails as her being aware that she didn't know that she hit him. Why would she call him 49 times, or et cetera, et cetera? How do you think Hank is going to spin that, or how do you think that's going to go down in this trial?
I think that she was wasted and she knew she reversed. I think she knew she clipped him and she drove away, and she left him nasty voicemails because she thought he was still, he got up and he shook himself off. And I don't know. I don't obviously know if she even thought ahead that much, but I think she was so raging mad and out of her mind because she was drunk and furious and jealous because, she had just heard that, when they were getting directions to the Albert house, it was on the street by Bella's mom's house. And, she's, as we know from the Aruba trip, that she gets very jealous very, very quickly. So in my opinion, that's how those voicemails occurred. She wasn't in her right mind to understand that he was actually very, very hurt until she maybe started a little bit later, as he's not answering, that panic started setting in a little bit more, and kind of like, she's trying to think like, wait, hold on, is he okay type thing.
I think this is going to be so easy for Hank. All he has to do is play one small clip. I didn't think he was mortally wounded. That's the only clip he needs to answer that question. She looked back. She thought, like Tuesday said, clipped him, left him there. He wasn't mortally wounded. I think in her mind, he got up and, she was worried he screwed the, ex-girlfriend or whatever. And that's what's raging through her drunk mind. And, I don't think she thought she killed him. I think she just thought she hit him.
I just want to take a moment to welcome Rhode Island's great crime beat reporter John DePetro, who's out there covering this case from the front line. So how's life on the front lines in the trial, John?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I apologize I'm late. I have family in town, but I've had people contacting me saying they mentioned you. Get in there. First of all, Kevin, you are, I mean, everybody on this panel can agree. Kevin is just amazing. And your dedication, your knowledge of the case is second to none. Everyone is rooting for you. Jennifer is so big time. I want to just go around quickly. Tuesday Gazette, I read everything you write. So my only complaint is I wish you wrote more. And Matt and Kate, Daniel, for someone first time on this case is incredible. Daniel and Kate, excuse me, Matt and Kate are so funny with the chemistry. But I run a busy schedule. I want to share with everybody, and I apologize for I see red sky, and I believe that someone sent me a notice that's a legal person. But I want to just share with everybody what it's like inside the courtroom, because one of the reasons, I mean, everybody on this panel understands the wave of it's so much noise surrounding this, and it's so negative, and there's so many people that if they would stop being so juvenile and think for themselves, there's so much to learn here about the system, and it's so interesting. But I do feel there's two different worlds, Kevin. One is inside the courtroom, and what everyone here I think would think and believe is I think Brennan is the king. There's all the noise outside of the courtroom, and they go into overdrive trying to spin that the defense is rolling and so forth. I think Brennan is. I would imagine if he looked at this and said where he wanted to be Memorial Day weekend, I just think he is the king of the courtroom. His dynamic with the witnesses is so strong. It's just so different, just the way he interacts with the judge. And I want to share with everyone that and I said this on Court TV, but I don't see, and no one talks about this. Like, if you were on the jury, why does anyone think they like Karen Reed? I mean, is she a lawyer that got in trouble? I mean, she goes up to the sidebars, but those Karen clips are just brutal, and it's all negative. And she's mocking Peg O'Keefe, and she undermines the defense, and she talks about drinking, and she just sits there, and it's so loud, and it takes over. But what I think, and I've interviewed different jurors after a trial, and one juror said to me one time when people ask about what it's like to put together the evidence, and he said, I want you to picture going up to a buffet, and you don't take everything at a buffet. You
I
just
do.
gravitate towards certain things that really stand out. And this was a big guy, and he said, if I go to a buffet and they have lobster, I'm going right for the lobster. But he said, so many times things were like after the trial, he said that they had made a big deal of, and it wasn't a big deal. The LinkedIn page is not strong. There's so many witnesses, and I know that Jennifer will say after a trial, I mean, in these people, they're seeing so many different witnesses, but I'm going to tell you what they're going to remember, and that was Dr. Wolf. He looked like Einstein on the stand, and that was not that suit and shirt went out off the rack. I mean, I know custom made clothes when I see them. He fit the part of the white hair and the tan and the way he spoke,
Yeah.
and when the jury will remember when they were feet away from a brain surgeon of all people, and
Yeah.
the manner he spoke about when he talked about that the brain is so soft and you could put your finger through a brain almost like soft watermelon. What I just find the local Boston media is not capturing, and obviously the defense is not, but he illustrated for everyone without having to say it that she sent him flying, knocking him out of his shoe and propelling him, and he hit the ground on his head very hard, and
Yeah.
so much that his brain basically bound. I mean, it was terrible to listen to, but the way he talked about death and that we don't die instantly, that it's a process, and he spoke only the way that a doctor could, and he owned the courtroom. He absolutely owned the courtroom, and he and Hank were in such motion. It was just very. It was a moment. It was very powerful, and he described. Forget about this business of the weight bench inside, and they beat him, and then now they try to say, well, maybe he fell downstairs or slipped. This guy practiced. Dr. Wolf practiced in Minneapolis. He knows what it's like if somebody falls shoveling and they hit the back of the head. He illustrated a vision, a picture of John basically being catapulted onto a hard ground, and what was the result of his head. And when he talked about 95 degrees starts hypothermia, 80 degrees is severe thermia, and the body just starts shutting down. It all just kind of fit. It all fit. And I mean that is a moment that anyone's in the courtroom, and I'm telling you that jury, there's several witnesses that you're not going to question. You're not going to question him. The other one was the niece. The niece was extraordinary. The niece reiterated what we heard from Jen McCabe and Kerry Roberts. The niece, sitting there, obviously doesn't like Karen. Looking over at her grandmother, Peg O'Keefe, who's just so remarkable in the courtroom, and the jury looks at Peg O'Keefe constantly. The niece saying, Karen saying, maybe, could I have hit him? Did a plow? It wasn't just some person. I mean, what we saw with the niece was the direct result of John O'Keefe not being around, and she was there, and her looking at her grandmother after that, and that was a really powerful moment, you guys. This business of, I mean, I laugh at some of the media with Alessi with the friggin' LinkedIn. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, the guy just
Well, I want to
Burgess.
ask you about that just to
Go
stop real
ahead.
quick, because I wanted to. To me, that was crucial testimony, the Burgess testimony, because he is the one that put out the key data that establishes to within a second.
Yes,
So, what was your sense of that? I don't even know if you were covering that day. What was
I
your sense of
was.
the jury's? So, what was the jury's reaction to that? Was he dinged up by Alessi at all? Because for me, a big factor too is the fact that that was the key data. Did the jury recognize that? And if they did, they would have had an expectation that the job of the defense at that point was to somehow debunk that data, and they seem to make no effort at it. They went after the wrong date, which was
Yes.
meaningless, and the cover letter stuff. So the CV stuff rather. So what was your impression of the reaction to the jury on that? Was it effective? Any of that
You know
effective on
what,
either side?
Kevin? I think everyone needs to remember and understand that, and I'm not going to name names, and I'm not trying to get into as they say, like a pissing match with anyone. There are some members of the media that want her to be found not guilty because they think it's a better story, because then it becomes Karen's revenge. The power demonstration he put on of the phone matching up with the Lexus at the 3-point turn. He and Hank Brennan is they just make it so easy to understand. And where they have really drilled down on John's cell phone, of which every one of those jurors has a cell phone, and everyone thinks of, find my iPhone and how we track each other. The cell phone, it's so identifiable for the jury. And that demonstration that Burgess did of the phone and the Lexus matching up, it I mean, it was picture perfect. So my answer is, I think that trumped whatever Alessi was trying to, you didn't update your resume.
Right.
I'm gonna stick by. I think a lot of those people are not on LinkedIn, and
Right.
a lot of people aren't, and it had nothing to do with what he had just demonstrated. I don't think it came out like that. I think Hank Brennan, and something I want to point out, and I don't know if anyone else has mentioned this, but when I watch the defense, they're not in a rhythm. Hank's in a rhythm. Yannetti has not made an impression on the jury. He had more of a presence in the first time. AJ, you'd see Jackson would really get in a rhythm as he was tuning up all the different witnesses. No one's in a rhythm. Alessi to me, when he gets up, I see the jury like this is my time to zone out, and they do zone out.
Yeah.
Where Hank Brennan also deserves a lot of credit, you guys, is we see a lot of Alessi in the afternoon, and right around 3 o'clock, everybody starts to hit the wall. It's
Mm,
draining. It's
yeah.
tiring. The jury, they're going home exhausted. This is so much to absorb, and it's so intense. And you know what else I want to mention? Michael Proctor. They could say it 1,000 more times. It doesn't mean anything. It's just thrown out there. It's so like they're throwing meat. They're throwing out like applause lines at a convention for the Karen faithful to applaud. They don't know what he looks like. Hank Brennan has painted in that courtroom. There's a very clear picture of what happened here. It happened
Mm,
outside by the flagpole, and
mhm.
it happened when he got out of the vehicle.
Right.
And I think he has really moved the ball. He's in football, they call it the red zone between the 20 and I mean Hank with the next accident reconstruction, he's about to punch the ball through into the end zone.
Mhm.
And I recognize, presumed innocent. Let's give the defense a chance. I don't think they have a witness that can trump Dr. Wolf.
Mm.
I think he was that strong. He
Kate,
was
are
he
we
was
going to
like the
hear?
voice of God up there. He was.
Yeah, he
Go
was
ahead, Kevin. I'm
intimidating.
sorry.
That's okay. Just Kate, are we going to hear from the ring expert? Is that still on the
I
table?
don't know. That's a good question. I haven't heard anything since. It sounds like they're planning to wrap up their case in chief, the Commonwealth, is like this week. So
Yeah.
maybe not. I don't even know if they. I don't think that they necessarily even need it. I feel like this is. I mean, when you look at the elements of just OUI manslaughter and what they've proven, I believe beyond a reasonable doubt, they don't have much more to go here before, I think that's slam dunk.
It would go a ways towards second degree, though, if you could show a likelihood that she deleted any videos early in the morning, right?
Right.
That's what I'm
I don't know if
wondering. Like,
yeah. Go ahead.
that seems to be missing. Like, he's not even touching that yet. And that's why I'm like, how can they be wrapping up already? Like, they didn't even talk about her driving around the next morning, potentially back to the body. They didn't even show, I don't think they showed the sister-in-law staring at the taillight. So like maybe he's waiting for a rebuttal, but I don't know. It just seems strange that they haven't really attempted to talk about the second degree murder part, which is the morning after, right? And everything that was done. Maybe William Reed's going to be called. Maybe that's going to be at rebuttal. I don't know.
I wanted to comment about something that John said is whenever you're in trial, there is this either connectivity or disconnect between these lawyers and the jury. And Brennan, because he's doing 90%, other than sort of the boring stuff, although the boring stuff I like, the digital stuff, but he has, I don't know, I wanted to ask John if you could see this rapport, but I feel the rapport with him and the case and delivering it to us. There is no rapport that's been established with the others because they have it parsed out to too many people.
Yes.
They should have just did it like they did last time with AJ leading the band and then
Yes.
one or two of the boring witnesses going off to the others. Alessi is almost like trying to grandstand him. And what's funny is Alessi can't stay awake and he's good at putting people to sleep.
Yes. Jennifer, you're right. And Alessi, and again, don't get me wrong, nicest guy in the world. I'm going to see him on Tuesday. But Brennan, he makes Brennan look that much stronger. All due respect, same thing with Lally. There's definitely like an A team and a B team. And I get the sense when Lally gets up, I can see people start to drift. When Alessi gets up, people are definitely, if they could, they'd look at their phones when Alessi's up. They can't. But it's not your imagination. Hank is talking. He's talking to the jury. And you know what else he does very effective is when he gets where he needs to be, he sits down. He doesn't waste any time,
That's
that
huge.
guy.
That's
He
huge.
doesn't waste any time. I mean, as you guys know, there's no perfect case. You know what else I just want to mention about her supporters? They treat it like a board game. They treat it as if, this person said that, therefore, everything they said is thrown out. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
The Aaron Hernandez trial. I mean, some of the people that got up were. I've covered trials where they bring people in for witness protection. There's people that are criminals, and it's all just how that these people they just have this false sense of what it's like in dealing with people, and there's so much noise. You guys were all on the right path, but I some of the defense attorneys I can't even look at on YouTube, obviously, because it's just I don't know. You guys know what it's like.
Yeah.
People ask, and you try to. Some of these her supporters and everything. I tell people, the people that sit on the upper deck at Gillette. If they're yelling, does it really matter to the Patriots? Does that really help them win if the upper deck at Gillette is yelling or they're sitting on their hands? I don't think it factors in.
I think it matters me yelling at my TV.
That's right. I want to mention one more thing, and I know Kevin's friendly with him, but Nick Rocco, that's the first time I've heard it, and it didn't. I don't think it got covered a lot, but he said for the first time the other night, I heard him say that because of Dr. Wolf, now they're starting to say that maybe John fell backwards down the stairs, that maybe
Yeah.
Chloe bit him, or maybe
Yeah.
he got thrown down the stairs, and then they panicked and then threw him out. I had never heard that one before, but it's to me that's not a good sign for the defense that they're trying to adapt based on that tells me they recognize how powerful Dr. Wolf was.
Mhm.
And I get it. There's still a ways to go in the defense. They get to put on their witnesses, which I know they have a lot of hopes for the Rhode Island medical examiner. I'm telling you, Hank is going to carve that lady up. And I don't. I think they underestimate what it's going to be like for Hank Brennan to be on cross instead of,
Mm.
it's so much. Maybe Red Sky can mention that. To me, it's Alan Jackson would always rather be the one on cross than trying to, help his witnesses. If Red Sky could touch on that.
Yeah. So
Yes.
Red, you can expand on it. This is you already talked about a little bit, but the difference in the questioning that's allowed between cross and direct.
Yeah, so in Massachusetts, they follow the minority rule. It can exceed the scope of direct. It's very broad. So Brennan is going to have a lot of leeway when it comes to cross. I would be very apprehensive if I was the defense, to be honest with you.
Mm.
Yeah, and
So
I
John,
mean,
I know, John, you're of a strong opinion. So we were asking this just as we were at the tail end of this discussion when you got on. So you can
sorry. Yeah.
no, but you can jump in here. Perfect timing. So your belief as to whether or not the defense will call on Michael Proctor, Brian Higgins, Brian Albert.
I don't, and I have learned in speaking to people. From my understanding is they won't because they would essentially enable them to leave unscathed. I, Proctor, I was in court last spring. Once you get past those inappropriate texts to the sister and his friends, he was actually his final day. He's very effective on the stand, and he was actually a good witness. He ran a solid investigation. So I don't think they will because the way you have to just ask open-ended questions in the Karen Reed faithful would be waiting for Jackson to come in with with a sword, and he's just asking open-ended questions. So I don't think so. I think they're putting a lot of faith on the medical examiner and these ARCA guys. But I'm looking forward to the ARCA guys because I think Hank Brennan is going to just tear them to shreds. I mean, he set an example in the hearing when they had to come in of just how much he could drill down on them. I believe right now that the Commonwealth's I think they're in really good shape because the way he has pieced this trial together, one door leads to the next, and he is bringing them along, and now he's just going to finish it off with the accident reconstruction, but I think he's knocking on the door. I think he's right there. And there's nothing about the house. Anyone that's talking about the house is not paying attention.
Right.
Anyone that's talking about the Sally port, and I what I'm saying is because I get these comments back to me, and anyone that's talking about butt dials, the Sally port, the Google search, they're not paying attention to what's going on in this trial. That's not this trial. No, Hank is pitching almost like a perfect game. He is, and it's very clear. There's no one thinking, gee, maybe he got in. No one thinks he went in the house.
Mm.
Nobody.
So
I think it's
so
interesting. One
one of
final
the
thing. I
things.
think it is
Go ahead.
interesting if they can somehow bring up that maybe he slipped. I think
Mhm,
that I don't know how they would do that. I think that is interesting that somehow maybe
mhm,
he slipped or something. But there's
Yeah, but then
I
you've got
think
all the other evidence, John.
yes, good
It's like
point.
you can't reconcile a slip and fall with the microscopic pieces of taillight in his
Right.
clothing, with her
Excellent
vehicle
point.
data, and
Yep.
that's the problem. I think with Free Karen Read is they want to view each witness, each piece of testimony, each piece of evidence in a vacuum, and then work really hard to discredit that one piece. And that's just not how it works. The jurors are not going to deliberate on just one piece of evidence. It's bringing it all in and saying, okay, can we decide to a moral certainty what happened here? And I think that there's a lot of strong evidence that just all corroborates itself. It's very difficult to reconcile with the little, nitpicky questions that they can still bring up.
One more thing I just want to mention, and I apologize, everyone. I have family in town, and so I can't stay that long. But I push back on it, and maybe Jennifer Tuesday or someone can weigh in on this. But I push back on this notion that a lot of people say is like all it takes is one, because again, when I've talked to different jurors, a lot of times it takes a lot for someone to go against the crowd. And
mm,
and a lot of the people that I see there don't seem like the type, like it would take a lot to stand up
mm,
to 11 other people. I think a
interesting.
regular person thinks they could get in trouble with the judge, they could
Mm,
get in trouble with the sheriffs. I know everyone talks about it only takes one.
right.
I think most people are followers. Most people, I've talked to jurors that say, I did have questions, but it went on so long and I had tickets for the Bruins that night, and I just kind of went along with it.
Yeah.
It would take a lot if you had 11 people voting one way. It's a special type of individual that would, just be so adamant that they would swim upstream against that. I don't go along with that.
Or a stealth juror, which is my
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, well, listen, I am fans of everyone here. Kevin is the leader. Again, I do have some people, some family in from out of town, but I will do this again before, obviously, as we enter the new week of the trial.
John, you're
Well, thank
great.
you for your insight, John.
I hope it was
Thank you,
helpful.
John.
So,
Great to
you,
hear from
John.
you as always,
all
my
right,
friend.
Thanks for
Kevin,
fighting
always
against
thinking of
John.
you. All right, thanks, you guys. Keep it up, Matt. You're hilarious.
No, thanks.
Matt, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and then see what John thought of this, but he had to go, was you're very critical of Judge Canoni. So I wonder if I was wondering if so being in the courtroom like John is, do you still feel the same kind of criticism of the judge?
I mean, I feel like she is trying to be fair. Like, I know that is her attempt, but I think that she just bends too much to the defense. I think
Yeah.
that chalk with Proctor's name in the column under the glass is absolutely ridiculous. He did not collect the glass off the bumper, and now the jury's going to have that in the deliberation room. Like, I just think they're not going to remember the testimony. They're going to have that chalk, and like they're going to say, "Oh, Proctor found that glass," and it's absolutely ridiculous. And like,
Red
it
Sky
just
was
really
just
bothers me.
Red Sky. I'll go back to you, Matt, in a sec. Just Red Sky,
Yeah.
just to respond to what Matt just said on that. Is that up to the prosecution to have pointed that out to the judge? Is that up to the judge to have pointed that out? Because I think Matt raises a really good issue on that.
I'm sorry, I totally missed that question. I was moving around rooms.
Mention it again, Matt, to explain it to her.
So the chalk, when they were like, cross-examining the woman that examined the glass, they had like a bunch of columns that had cut knocked off, and they had next to, I think it was piece E that was found in the bumper. They said found by Proctor, and it was just a really weird chart, but he did not find any glass on the bumper. That was collected by Maureen Hartnett, but it's kind of just insinuating that the one piece that matched was found by Proctor. But I just feel like the chalk itself is very misleading, and that evidence was confusing. So the defense somehow got that in there, and I just don't think it should have been allowed in.
Yeah, so you know what? Really, I feel like that should have been something that was objected to by the prosecution. And if I'm being honest with you, like, I really appreciate Lally. Don't get me wrong, but I really wish Brennan did that that testimony, because that witness was not, and I don't get me wrong, I don't want to disparage anybody. She was not a very strong witness in the matter that she really needed a lot of direction. And so I feel like Brennan would have been a better person to conduct that examination, because he really could have elicited a stronger testimony. And that was important testimony, because Jackson really ran with it, and he kind of confused it, because really at the end of the day, it was all the same glass. And the jury really needed to understand that. And I don't feel like Lally really brought that home. I do feel like that should have been objected to.
I think there was something else that before I interrupted you, Matt. I just wanted to get to that. Was the prosecution responsible for pointing that out? I think there was something else you were going with on Judge, maybe on Judge Canoni. Maybe, I don't know if it was to do with chalks or something.
I mean, that's the recent one that I can think of. I'm just trying to think of, so far, I think it's been better this time. But we'll kind of see what happens. I can't think of any other recent, but I do think that she's trying to be unbiased. I think she bends to the defense too much. But I mean, people say that that's a good thing, because you don't want a judge bending to the prosecution, because then it's an easy appeal. So we'll see.
Jen, compared to please respond to that, because you've been on a lot of trials, Jen. Compare Judge to other trials, and then whatever else you want to talk about.
Look, if you're a judge and neither side is happy, you're probably doing your job right?
Good point. Yeah.
She's helping, So there's been some rulings. I'm flabbergasted. I mean, I still think I think sanctions are coming at the end regarding ARCA. Never seen anything like that in my career. But I think she just didn't want to impinge on the Sixth Amendment issues there. I have to go. But I just wanted to leave, just because I have to go to work, but I just wanted to leave saying this. And that is that the reason I think that these unethical, pathetic YouTubers and officers that are on YouTube now, and all these people, they consider this entertainment. And now that I'm sort of a part of a lot of things, I see that they do truly market this as entertainment. How can I make my channel big? How can I make it grow? And I have literally seen channels grow 20-fold. I can think of one. And because they're taking this ridiculous soap opera view and changing facts. And so I just hope that this jury is truly pure. I hope there's no stealth jurors, and I hope justice is served for John O'Keefe, and that people like you, Kevin, and everyone else on this panel that is in it for the right reason. I just hope you guys all keep singing the good song.
Thank you, Jen. And there's no question that Jen's channel breaking the case would be 20 times bigger if she followed the conspiracy theory. There's no question about it.
There's no question. Even when one time I said, listen, everybody, I'm going to take a second look at this. I'm just going to take a second look. This was last year. And I think that just on my Twitter, just like that, somebody could go look at this. There were about 200,000 responses. Please just take a look. Please take a look, Jen. Please see our side. And you know what? I did take another look, and I saw the same facts. I can't change the facts. So and I think that's the same with all of us. Just think, Matt.
we live in a dopamine society. You know, we are quick to want that sensational hit, and that's what we are drawn to, unfortunately. I mean, you're going to want to pick up in, you know, a tabloid faster than you're going to pick up a dictionary, you know? So that is what the problem is that trying to bring the facts of the case, which is actually really, I'm trying to see if I can cuss here. Yeah, really fucking boring is,
I
you
won't stop
know,
you.
But it really is. I mean, this is a drunk driver who is angry at her boyfriend and reversed into him, and end of story. And that's boring when you talk about it over and over and over again. But when you bring in these possibilities of, you know, this corrupt system and this poor little girl who is just, you know, wants to be a professor, and she's the underdog, and she barely only had 4, 6, 9, 2 drinks. And, you know, so it sells. And that's the maddening part, is that it's part of human nature to be drawn to that, especially when you're like getting off of work and you're bored, or you're just wanting to like relax. You want mindless television. You want mindless activities a lot of times. And so as viewers, we have to be more intentional about where we're putting our views at, because views are votes. That's really what it comes down to. So, I mean, even if we're viewing really shitty stuff just to see what they're saying, we're voting for them, you know? So, I've unsubscribed to a lot of people following this case.
Well, let's freestyle. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? Kate's been quiet for a while. Anybody got anything they want to jump in on? Matt or Red Sky? Danny?
You know, to me, I think with this case, and a lot of people tell me, you know, did you watch the first trial? You should watch the first trial. You should watch it. And I'm like, you know, no, I don't want to, for one. And two, you know, for me, I guess I was in law enforcement. You know, I didn't look at the outcome of trials to try to figure out if somebody did something or not. I looked at the evidence. And to me, there's some undeniable evidence. You have her vehicle missing pieces of taillight at 5:23 a.m. when she's backing out of John's driveway and then going down the street. I know some people say, well, she tapped his car, but there are 0 red pieces of taillight in the snow. And the pieces of taillights that are missing out of that taillight are significant. It's a large amount of taillight that is missing. And then again at 8 o'clock in the morning, with the Sally Port photo from the, I think there was a image from a dash cam. And so you have those things. You have her words. You know, I think initially she was saying that her and her defense team were saying it was an accident. There was no intent. And then it changed and evolved over time. You know, her story continuing to change, her words changing, whether she saw him go in or didn't see him go in, you know, those type of things. You know, I looked at the so-called dog bites, and one of the things that I noticed is that every one of John's injuries on his arms are going in the same direction. There's not one that goes vertical up and down. They're all going sideways. That tells me it's all coming from a single event, not a multiple event that would have occurred when you have gotten attacked by multiple people. And so, you know, you look at the main facts and of what had occurred there. The shoe was found at the roadway. There was no blood trail coming from the house. I know some people are saying, well, there was snow. I was like, well, yeah, there was snow, and they were able to collect blood from somewhere. We saw it in the red Solo cups, but yet that area that they collected it from wasn't between John's body and the house. And so, so many things that are undeniable there that, to me, it's obvious she hit him. You know, now whether or not the murder aspect into it, you know, her going in reverse at 24 miles an hour, I think is telling. I think in order for John to be so far up there, I think she may have swerved at him, still clipping him, but swerved in that direction.
And he had just got out of the car a few seconds before. That's new evidence, Daniel, that we didn't know before. It came out because of what time the battery cooled off as you get out of the door. So that, and what time he turned on and turned off his phone. So literally, I think he got out of the car I don't know, maybe 7 seconds or something like that. There's a little estimate, so there's a little possible plus or minus on that, but like say 7 seconds before the phone last moved.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, but the doctor and what he said as far as the raccoon eyes and stuff like that. When my group of folks that watch my channel, they started telling me, "Hey, look into this. It looks like a dog bite. It looks like that." The first thing I told them was like, "No, this looks like somebody hit their head on the ground and their brain bounced." I've seen it. I've seen several people that have died in a very similar manner, whether they got reversed into and they hit the ground on the head, whether they got pushed, or somebody slipped in the bathroom and they hit their head on the ground. It doesn't take very much force for that to happen.
Was it on ground or was it on concrete or what?
So it was on dirt. The one that the guy got ran. Yeah. So it was at a dirt driveway where somebody pulls in. They got ran over in that one. I've seen a guy with had epilepsy, have a seizure, slip in his bathtub, hit the bathtub, and it didn't come to. I've seen somebody get hit by an 18-wheeler and survive. So I know a lot of people like to try to look at this incident and then they look up accidents and stuff like that and try to compare, but no two are the same. The direction of force, velocity, the person that's being hit, the conditions of the roadway. I mean, there's so many variables that need to be taken into place here to determine what had occurred. And to go in there and say, "Oh no, it couldn't have been an accident because the damage of the vehicle isn't significant." I've seen vehicles have very little signs of an accident and create a lot of damage. And so it's where you get hit, how you get hit. If there's some sort of support there, that's probably why the quarter panel didn't crumple. It's the corner end of the rear end of the vehicle. And so the tail light braking, I spoke with a homicide detective and we went into this exact scenario here. And the fact that tail light had been on for some time and it was emitting heat in the temperatures that it was in would cause it to break easier. So, for those that think, "Oh, well, it takes a lot of force and this, that, and the third." Well, there's a lot of context that needs to come into play. And, I saw the videos, the blizzard aspect of it. A lot of people are expecting a perfect investigation in those type of conditions. I think is outrageous. The Brian Koberger case happened inside of a house and police were back and forth there multiple times for multiple weeks collecting data and information and evidence. That was in an enclosed building. This scenario here was outside in the elements during one of the worst blizzards. I think it was the worst blizzard in Boston history for the month of January. I think it's what it said that I read somewhere. Which also did a pretty good job of preserving the scene, making it impossible for a lot of people to get out there. So to me, I think there's some undeniable evidence that points in the direction of her doing it. I'm interested to see how the defense plans to attack some of these things, because I think I didn't watch the first one, but I think that a lot of the shock and awe from the first one has also come out of that because they've allowed certain people talk about certain things like Buchanan. And I probably would have thought, and I would have agreed that if Proctor was up there reading his text messages of what he said, probably had a bigger impact than Buchanan reading somebody else's text messages. But yeah, that's basically all I got. I think thus far the state has really, really presented a very strong case, and I'm glad that the jury didn't see the first trial similar to me, because I think they're coming up with a similar answer as I am.
I want to address a question to Matt and Kate. And Tuesday already addressed this early on in her comments, but this is something that I know I wrestle with this too. So we've been covering this case now for a couple of years. And it's, to me, a lot of times it mostly feels now it's not fun. It's not that it ever should have been fun because the tragedy you're dealing with, but it feels like an obligation to kind of finish the fight. And for the sake of the public and the sake of, do you guys, we'll go to Matt first and then Kate. Do you feel any of that, Matt? Because you've been covering this for a couple of years too. Do you feel an obligation? Is it really like a weight on this? Do you feel like you have to go through it?
Yeah, and I mean, I just feel like I've been saying the same thing for like 2 years straight. Not too much has had to change, so it is pretty boring.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to more free Karen Read people now that are starting to like realize, and it's like there's like three different categories. Like one is like the gaslighter. They come all sweet and they're like, I just want to understand. And then they just keep moving the goalpost. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't understand the injuries. I'm like, well, how many other cases have you looked at and compared the injuries and determined like what they were?
Right.
Like most killers don't release the autopsy photos. And then there's like the one that's like, oh yeah, I believe she's not. I mean, I believe she's guilty now. But then every day they come with a new conspiracy and it's like, and then you debunk it and they're like, you're ruining my dreams. I just thought I came with like found new information. And it's like, that's how they think about it. It's like they want to feel like they're solving something and they're trying to look for something that's really not there. And then the other one is just like the freakazoid. Those are the pink people that stand outside, and they've been standing outside. And I think that they've just bought into it for a number of different reasons. I think they appealed to the group that already didn't like the police. They appealed to, conspiracy theorists, people that already don't like. And those are the weirdest ones because I feel like that's the majority. It's like the Turtle Boy followers who are gung-ho about the feds are corrupt when they were indicting Donald Trump for lying about election fraud. But now the feds are like the shining beacon of truth in this case. And it's like, what is wrong with you people? And when asked about Black Lives Matter on Vinny's show, he's like, oh, so did you always not like police? And like Turtle Boy's like, no, I'm always back the blue. I never liked Black Lives Matter. And it's like, you're telling on yourself right now. So you don't care about real problems in the police force. It's just this case. And I think that's the majority of these whack jobs.
Kate, what's the burden you're carrying on this? What are your feelings?
Yeah, no, I'm completely burnt out on it, but it's just sort of like a moral imperative, just going to see it through.
Yeah.
But it's exhausting. I just wanted to rewind to something that Dan had said about the second degree murder and just point out for probably the 500th time, because like you're like stuck on repeat with this case. I think the evidence doesn't change, the law doesn't change, but she doesn't have to have swerved to try to hit him. She doesn't have to have even intended to hit him. She just needs to have intended to floor her car 24 miles in reverse at 75% acceleration. And I think that it's a tough argument to try to make that like, no, I accidentally did that. And they are completely cutting themselves off from even making that sort of mitigating argument because she's denying all culpability whatsoever. So I think that at least if you look at the law, the way that it's written, it's so close to manslaughter because of that recklessness prong that there's a good chance that they might get that too.
I wonder too is sorry.
No, go ahead, Susan, please.
The neuro surgeon had said that John would not have died right away, that usually that brain injury that he's seen before could be like 5 hours or so. So really that puts her in the time zone of when she called Carrie and said John was dead. So right there, it's like, why are you not driving to go find him right now? She could have saved his life. And I think right there is murder too.
Just to expand on what Kate was saying about the reckless endangerment prong. So this is, the idea that Karen, once you guys, the active intent was putting it in reverse when she knew or should have known that someone could have been behind the vehicle. And that's now reinforced by this data that we were just talking about a few minutes ago that shows that what time John got out of the car just seconds before. So she now absolutely knew that John had just gotten out of the car. She starts to go forward for several seconds and then suddenly slams it into neutral and then into reverse and floods it going backwards. So that doesn't show that she intended to hit John, but it does satisfy completely the third prong that Kate's talking about. She definitely knew that John was in the area and she's doing it high speed and reverse. Did I explain that well, Kate?
Yes, that you need to intend to do the act. And I think also, like you said, Tuesday, the constant reminders that she failed to render aid. So maybe you could get away with being like, well, she didn't know she hit him. I can see a plausible world where she believed that she hit something when she left there, not necessarily knowing that it was him.
Yep.
And that perhaps maybe that's where that anger comes from. Sort of like when you're mad at someone, you're arguing, you stub your toe, and then you're yelling
Exactly.
at them like,
Yep.
"You made me stub my toe too." Like, could
Yep.
she have gotten mad at him and said, "And you made me crack up my car too"? The
I think
problem
so.
that she has there, though, is that at 4:30 in the morning, she's already indicating that something is seriously wrong with him,
She
and
put it together.
she's
put it
failing
together.
to take any action to get him some help. So yeah.
Exactly. Anybody want to react to that?
I mean, I'd
Yeah.
take it a step further. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know she said that she was fighting with him, and I can't remember if it was a clip or something she said in an interview, but I really think that that would be part of a strong ending for that, because even like, voluntary manslaughter is a lesser included offense to second degree murder, and that's a heat of passion crime. So, I mean, I think that would be a really strong ending.
Okay. Do you guys want to wrap it up? Or is there anything else? I got time if there's something else you want to go into.
No, I think that's the main thing, is like he just needs to show that she knew before she arrived. And I think because I personally think that she connected to the Wi-Fi at 12:36. She calls one after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. She leaves that voicemail, "I hate you." She's looking at the damage. But then at 12:41, she has that voicemail where she's parking her car in the garage. She's silent. She's not running around. She's peaceful. And then her phone kind of goes silent for like 20 minutes after that. So I feel like that 12:41 is when she was like, I need to plan an alibi. She also says in another interview, she was blasting U2 on the radio, and she knows that because when she got in the car in the morning, it was still blasting. There's no music in that car when she's parking in the garage. So
That's a good point.
Did I hear it right?
Yeah.
I might have missed this. What did she leave the car running after she parked there? And so it was still she didn't turn it off at 12:36. It didn't turn off
Right.
till 12:41. Did I mishear that?
Right.
Yep, that's
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
that fits
And
my
plus,
theory all along on this. That Karen pulled up, didn't have a garage opener because she doesn't live there, so had to go into the house in order to open the door from the inside to drive it in. So maybe she went in and went to the bathroom, but that's been my theory since the last trial.
I think she had a code to the garage, if I remember correctly, but she had to get out of the
you still have to
car.
get out, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But I think too is that voicemail that she says, "No one knows where you are," shows also her knowledge that she knows he didn't go in that house, and she's trying to get a hold of him. I mean, right there, I feel like that's a very curious voicemail to say that she just thought he went in the house and wasn't answering her calls. So I did want to mention real quickly is I noticed I was trying to pay attention to some of the questions. But one of them that kept coming up was, people are saying, or Free Karen Reed side keeps saying that the Commonwealth's timeline keeps changing. And I just wanted to say, it's not that it keeps changing, it's narrowing down. That is
It's
what we
being
have
refined.
seen.
Yep.
Yeah, it's getting more and more and more detailed. And that very last time with the time variance, it wasn't even a change of the time. It was just an acknowledgement that what had happened was the defense's own expert, I think they had added instead of subtracted or something with the time variance and put that in the report. And Burgess actually acknowledged that there was an error there. And so he eyed it, and he's the one that figured it out. And that was huge. And also it didn't need to be anything either. It's like it's a difference of seconds, really, is what it is. So, but it just narrowed it down even more. And I don't know how the defense gets past that unless there's someone that's just gone totally rogue on the jury.
Right. I'm glad you look at it that way. I was going to ask you that, but you answered it. So, what your opinion was of the weight and the effectiveness of Burgess's testimony about the vehicle data and the times that he outlined. Because to me, you guys know for over a year, that's been my estimate, and I consider it bulletproof, and it was nothing complicated. It's just taking on Trooper Garino's GPS points, but just going from that 3-point turn on Cedar Crest to 8 minutes and 4 seconds later is when the next trigger event happens, and 4 seconds into that event is when there's the telltale signs of a pedestrian strike. And so, did you find that to be? Do you think the jury found that to be simply explained and compelling?
I don't know. Are you asking me? No.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
First, I guess you pronounce it Burgess, so thank you, whoever just told me.
I
was
probably got it
pronouncing
wrong. So
I did too. I don't know if you did. And Hot Billy is saying 12:45 to 12:32 is quite the narrow down. No, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, we were first going off of trigger events is how the first trial was looking at it. But this time around, Burgess was using multiple forms of data. We were not just using trigger events. He was using even ring footage and geolocation data and speed of the car and all these things, mileage. And he was able to pinpoint exactly the time of the clock of the car to where they were at. And that's what happened. That is the narrow down. And if you want to say that, what was it, 15 minutes, less than 15 minutes, 12 minutes is a huge narrow down, then by all means, that's fine for you. But
and this jury's not going to know. This jury's not going to know that Adam Lally made some difference.
They're not.
In the first trial, Adam Lally said it was that the collision was at 12:30 in his opening statement, and then in his closing statement, he oddly said it was at 12:45, and which didn't make sense because he already had Trooper Garino report that carrying it home around 12:36.
Yeah,
but that's all that's ancient history. That doesn't affect this jury,
Yeah, I think he made an error in his opening closing. And but what we know is the Commonwealth is not being dirty here. They're just doing their job.
Yeah,
and
really, truly.
It's pretty impressive.
Anybody else have any thoughts on any of that stuff we just talked about? The importance of that data or anything else you want to bring up?
I think it's huge. I think that timeline is it's pretty insurmountable. I think they could have tried to ding up Burgess as much as they, possibly could, and it still would kind of fall flat because he was able to show his work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She's
and
going
my mom
down.
is. I know, Matt, your parents watch this. My parents are watching it now. My mom is obviously not a tech person. I still can't teach her right click on the computer, and she's 80 years old, but it impressed me. She watched this and she's trying to be neutral on the case too. And she found that Burgess's testimony to be perfectly clear.
It was great. And they did what they did to Katie McLaughlin last trial is they could not let her testimony take over where it was, Karen said, I hit him. So they went to go dive deep into her background to try and figure out how to discredit her on the stand from something completely just so stupid. And this is what they did. They got a CD report from Burgess. He never lied. He did not lie to the court. And why would they go further and start looking into, things that did not matter? And, and I did go on LinkedIn and I did try to add in on my own to see what it would look like if you added in your degree. And it does say in the box, it says your graduate, something to the effect of like your graduation date or your expected date. And so if you put that in and then you just never update it, it's there, so.
I haven't updated mine since before the internet.
Yeah. I think everyone was like thinking to themselves during that testimony, like, what's on my LinkedIn account?
Right.
I'm just flashing the thank yous for the people that had donations, and we'll see if there's a new question in here that we missed. We'll see. fabulous, courageous panel. So we can seize on that word courageous too. I mean, it does take, it's a little lonely on this side sometimes. Matt, I'm sure, felt very alone out there in TikTok in the summer of 2023. I felt alone on YouTube. Kate would have felt alone. Jen Coffindaffer, she's on Fox News Nation at the moment, but she felt it was really her and Wendy that were maybe the first kind of experts going on court TV to speak for the prosecution side. So it is a part of this deal here. Happy Memorial Day. Hello, Daniel. Thank you for being on the show. Kevin K. Coffindaffer. So this is Daniel's in Ohio. So this is probably one of his followers out there. He's got a lot of followers. And Stacy, thank you for joining. We love having Daniel on. He's always welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys got anything else, or well, I just go through the.
I do not.
Oh, this is so we've talked about this before, but maybe someone want to jump on this. I haven't heard Matt's opinion on this. I have heard Kate's, but maybe she's got something new. So, I missed this in the opening until people in our audience pointed it out, maybe last week, but that Alan Jackson referenced how Karen got out of the car when, I don't know, at the same time John did it. What do you guys have any theories on that?
If you look at the testimony, he corrects himself later on, I think.
Oh,
he
okay.
says, right, so he says it, and then I think later on he says John got out of the car. So, I expect it was an accident, but if we were FKR, we would call him a liar, and
Right. I mean, Hank did his memory too, and he made a mistake too. He confused Jen's testimony with Kerry's at one point, but yeah.
Oh yeah, Hank's had a few mistakes in it, but yeah, Alan Jackson saying that he had an eyewitness that saw him go inside the house and data to prove it. So like, I can't wait to see that. I'm really waiting for that. Right. The eyewitness and the data.
Is Karen Reed gonna have, was his name Green? Isn't there an expert that's in question? Are they bringing him on, or are they bringing somebody else on that's going to try to argue the 227 search, or is that going to be something that they can't find someone?
Oh, he's coming. He's the only man in America that is.
He's the only one.
Yeah. You think they're calling McNasty? Really? I don't know.
I can't believe it. I'm surprised. Like him and Russell. Like if you think about those two, like neither one of them are credible at all from my perspective, and that's all they could get. And if they can only get them again, like she's done.
I don't think they're calling Dr. Russell. I think they're calling the new.
Oh, the YouTuber.
Yes, the YouTuber guy. So I think that's also probably what they're laying heavily on. I think that guy and Arca are their like star witnesses.
Oh my God!
Is this the guy that
Tuesday? You did such great work with that professor from the Vanity Fair article. Any updates on that?
I haven't reached out to him actually, and I probably will. I feel like he didn't want any of this. He didn't want. He's like a normal professor, just doing his job. They reached out. They kind of set him up. For those that don't know, the Vanity Fair article that came out originally, I believe it was the end of last summer, if I remember correctly, early fall. And it was by the writer, Julie Miller, who has been a very unethical writer in my perspective, because she has given a long form article that is basically defense, murder defendant telling the story as if it's the accurate story. Right. And she found a professor to analyze the 227 controversy, and she only gave this professor the defense's expert, Richard Green's affidavit, and said, have a go at it. So when he was analyzing it, he had no idea that Cellbright's, senior digital forensic expert had his own side to it, and so when I had reached out, he basically said that she misled her own readers by telling her readers that he looked at everything, and he didn't. He looked at what she gave him. And so it would be interesting to know now what is all said, and he was so nice. I'm sure he would answer my questions, and maybe I'll do it. I just knew he kind of felt he was being helpful, but he didn't want a part of this mess, you know.
And if you read the second article that came out on Vanity Fair, it exposed how dirty it was, the relationship, because this involved the person who became an alt juror who then joined Karen's team. I don't know if she's still on the team, but they really kind of they had a dirty deal where this juror put out a statement through Christina Rex, and Christina Rex was not part of this dirtiness. But I communicated with her. I don't want to say anything, but yeah, I think Christina resents the way she was used. But that statement was all that the defense wanted, was this juror to come out as somebody that's a former juror and say, Karen's getting screwed here. This was a double jeopardy issue, blah, blah, blah. And then, 3 weeks later, the defense team announces that this juror was joining them. So that deal was obviously already in the works. And on that same day, the next installment of the Vanity Fair article came out, and it was clear even that she held back the publication of that. It was all coordinated, which is just so dirty. You know, I mean,
The whole thing's so dirty. I mean, it's scary. It goes into media corruption, and that's really what this whole entire case is about. It's about a dirty defense team who has lines to dirty media, and they marketed a story of a dirty, corruption narrative, and it's scary that this can happen, really.
Yeah. Are you seeing anything similar to this, Daniel, in the Kohlberger case?
Similar as to what? What do you mean?
Similar as to these dirty relationships. I don't know anything about his defense team. Is his defense team public? Are they public defenders? Has his family sprung for a defense? Are they playing the media?
They're definitely public defenders, and I don't think they've played the media. But Judge Hippler is an amazing judge, and I think he's watching the Karen Reed case. A lot of things he said, I think, were because of what's going on in the Karen Reed case. Mainly the very first one, he's like, I don't want a train of people coming up on the sidebars. Everybody and their mother coming up in the kitchen sink. And that's one of the things that I've noticed. I've even made comments about it before, where I was like, is it normal for 6 attorneys and the defendant to go up there every time there's a sidebar? And he says he doesn't want any of that. He doesn't want any surprises, sidebars, and all those other things. If there's if they're going to impeach somebody, if there's going to be an objection, he wants it faster. And he doesn't. So with the judge in this case, in the Karen Reed case, to me, it's felt like she's sided with the defense when put in under pressure situations. For the most part, I think that he recently, maybe not so much with maybe 2 of the rulings, but for the most part, I think that when she's been put under pressure, she has sided with the defense. And I think the defense would probably continue to do the pressuring if it's continuing to work for her. With Judge Hippler, it's the opposite. So if somebody files something on the eve of a hearing, he's denied it in the Brian Kohlberger case because of that. He's denied extensions in the case because of those things. And so I see a more fair judge in the Idaho case than I do with the Karen Reed case. But yeah, those are kind of the differences there. And the one thing that I think that the Karen Reed case probably has a bigger chance of than the Idaho case is that a free Karen Reed person has a higher chance of getting on that jury than a Proberger on the jury there with Brian's case. And that's the one thing that really does concern me and worry me about that case.
I just want to respond to someone in chat too, and you guys can react to this too, but they're saying that nobody would want to have, if they were be investigated by Michael Proctor, dirty. And so I have just a couple answers to that. First of all, Michael Proctor was investigated not just by the feds, but ultimately by the state for political reasons of political correctness. They each had their own reasons that they wanted to get rid of this guy, to really make this guy take the weight of the case. And so they would have used any dirt they could have found. They went back 5 years. So anything they could have found, that was evidence of any kind of corruption, they would have found it, and they didn't find anything. So all we really have are these insensitive messages. In addition to that, there's a one word antidote to every potential conspiracy theory involving Michael Proctor. Even if you want to believe that Michael Proctor is some long lost cousin of John, of whatever, of the Alberts or something
Of the
like that.
tail
Or they
light.
paid him $1 million.
Mhm.
It's even if Michael Proctor for some reason had some motive that we've never discovered to help risk his life, his career, the welfare of his family, to plant evidence 16 hours after a crime. The issue is timeline. That's the one word answer. Timeline. The timeline does not allow that Michael Proctor
Mhm.
could have planted evidence. We know what Karen's car was all day. It was under ring surveillance at John's house, and then it was under video surveillance at her parents' house, or Karen was in the car until it got to the Sally Port. And by the time it got to the Sally Port, it was too late. It was too late to plant evidence.
Well, I heard there was a DeLorean out back by the Sally Port, so
That's the only way.
that could be the answer.
Yeah.
That's what Higgins was doing.
Yep.
Or I should say Brian Albert was doing in Higgins' clothing that night.
Right.
Oh yeah.
His Higgins suit.
That's right. That's the best conspiracy one of the day. That one wins Tuesday. That conspiracy.
It really
theory.
does. It really brought me so much joy. I don't know. It's infuriating, all this stuff, but there are times when it's like you have to laugh at some of this nonsense, so
Yeah. All right. So
Just-
if we're ready to wrap it up, or if anybody, go ahead. If you want to jump, if anything else you want to add.
No, I was just gonna say it's just sad when it comes to like a lawyer named Melanie Little, because
Right.
it's like she has, people see that because I watched her a little bit at the beginning of this, and I was like, oh, this is like a legal person's perspective, because there wasn't a lot of people covering it, and I thought
Right.
that she had some credibility at first, and I think that a lot of people probably do think that, and it's just sad that she's that terrible.
Psych.
So it's like
mean, she's got theories. She thinks the fire trucks the sirens are going off intentionally by the Commonwealth during the trial. She
Oh my
thinks
God.
Judge Canone was coughing to give like a bat signal to Lally. I mean, this shit is wild. I'm sorry. I don't care if people think Karen is innocent, guilty, whatnot, but there are just some terrible, terrible sources to be getting your information from, and she is number one.
Yeah.
Well, she's got competition, but you know what I mean.
Does she ever correct herself with all these mistakes? Does she ever come back and say, "I'm sorry, guys, I got that wrong. I want to correct it"? Does she ever
No.
do that? Does she have that in
No.
her?
Mm-mm.
I
No,
have
but-
no idea.
That one time that Grant Smith Ellis said that she and Alan Jackson went to Mexico together, she lost her mind. Like, you can't put untrue things about me on Twitter. And it's like, lady, what are you doing? I heard that she's an 800-year-old vampiric creature that turned Alan Jackson gay. That's what I heard. I don't know. That's what I heard.
All right. Well, thank you very much, guys. This was a great idea Tuesday, so we'll have to do it again.
Yes.
It was great
It was
to have
nice
everybody
to
here.
be on the panel with faces I haven't actually been able to meet, before. So it's nice to actually see you, Dan, Boundless, and Kate. I think this is the first time we've actually been on a live together. So
Live, yes. I know you're in Discord.
yeah. And Red Sky, thank you so much for your legal perspectives on this.
Thank you guys. It was an honor.
And this was
Yeah,
Red's
thanks,
first
everyone.
time doing any of these shows, so
Yeah.
she's a beautiful woman. So we're gonna get her out of her shell and get her up on camera at some point. We're gonna
I
just
don't know
go step.
about that.
We all have to go step by step, So
Yeah, she did great, and I totally understand, wanting to
Scary.
keep anonymity in this.
yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're a lawyer,
Mm.
you got job to worry about, because they come for people.
Right. Anybody else want to say anything and goodbye, or we'll see people Tuesday?
Tuesday it is.
Yeah.
I want
My
to say
favorite day, guys.
I want to say thank you to everybody, and thank you for having me on. Real quick, I want to say my appreciation to those that served and paid the ultimate sacrifice.
Oh, yes.
And my thank you to the families and friends of those who made that sacrifice, who are living with that sacrifice. I have friends who went across and didn't make it back. This weekend is for them, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you, Daniel. We are neglecting that, but thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys. So we'll see everybody Tuesday. Thanks for being here. I think it was a great panel and very informative. And I'm sorry I didn't get to the questions that people put in chat earlier. We had a lot of people on, so it's kind of hard to manage all that, and especially with my limited brain capacity. But thank you very much, guys, and we'll see everybody soon. Check out Tuesday Gazette's articles. You can find her on Substack, Tuesday Gazette. And Boundless Millennial, you can find him here, but obviously on his own channel all the time, and on TikTok. He's on YouTube and TikTok. And the DT show, Daniel, and obviously you all know Kate.
I'm working on another video right now, actually. So
when's it coming out?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right.
I'm gonna be burning.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
All right. Thank you, guys.